тихонько, рано вранці поводу Маруся раз, 2, 3, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Маруся раз, 2, 3, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Вийшла дівчинонька, рано вранці воду брать, а за нею козаченько веде коня напувать. Маруся раз, 2, 3, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала. Маруся раз, 2, 3, калина чорнявая дівчина, саду ягоди рвала.
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Future
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1070 of the War News stream. It's good to see you all once again, and today we have massive news that Russia has withdrawn North Korean troops from Kursk. Also, Ukraine's launching more drone attacks on mainland Russia, and U.S.-supplied weapons are arriving in Kyiv as we speak. And it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, and this has been probably one of the largest news segments that we have ever had to cover for a 48-hour segment, as we have been able to hear major news today from quite literally every corner of the globe. As y'all can see, literally the news expands from the most northern area of the northern hemisphere all the way down practically to the equator at this point. We have news from quite literally everywhere, and to move into some of the general gists of the news that we're going to be covering today, we have been able to hear that the United States of America, through the Office of the President of the United States, has officially declared that the North Koreans must denuclearize or else face unknown but dire consequences, possibly alluding to some form of military action, considering that all available sanctions have already been leveraged against North Korea for over a decade. We have also been able to hear, within the area of East Asia, remaining on topic, that the People's Republic of China appears to be sponsoring a Okinawan independence movement in an attempt to drive Okinawa away from Japan and also force the United States off of the closest military base available near Taiwan. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear in other areas of the world that the United States of America has transported a whopping 90 Patriot missiles from Israel to Ukraine over the past few days. Those were the C-17 flights that we were seeing, and we now know exactly what those were. And we were also able to hear that U.S. forces are imminently to withdraw from the Syrian interim government here within the near future, and it appears that the Syrian interim government will be left alone to stand on its own two legs in the future and to see what they develop into. Meanwhile, outside of the Middle East, we have also been able to hear inside the United States of America, or really the area of North America some incredibly interesting developments. For one, we did get to see, unfortunately, at an Air Force base just east of Fairbanks at Eelson Air Force Base, an F-35A appears to have had a major malfunction and crashed. The loss of the aircraft, of course, did occur, but the pilot is alive. We were also able to hear that Denmark has now invested an additional $2 billion into the defense systems of the island of Greenland, as it appears that they are once again making an attempt to ensure that the United States will not seriously consider an annexation of the island due to a lack of security provided by the Danish, who control Greenland as a territory. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear of an armed clash in between federal officials and those of cartel forces near to the U.S.-Mexican border just a short while ago, as U.S. border strengthening operations are still underway. We have been able to hear that the United States of America is now deploying a large number of U.S. armed forces of multiple varieties into the area of the U.S.-Mexican border in an attempt to begin to conduct a show of force against the cartel, as there are already murmurings in the background of future offensive actions by the United States against the armed Mexican cartels within the area of the border, a return to the fight against Pancho Villa back 1 century ago. Over across the seas and inside of Ukraine, we've also been able to hear insanely massive news today. Putin has made it incredibly clear that the war will continue, as he has made a statement today spitting in the face of U.S. and Ukrainian officials by stating that no negotiation would be legitimate because the entire Ukrainian government is illegitimate, and until the Ukrainian government collapses or is removed from power forcefully, the Russian Federation will not conduct negotiations with Ukraine on any terms, once again showing that the Russian Federation is adamant that the war will continue. However, it doesn't really appear that that may be really within their ball court to decide, as the Ukrainians have made clear and concerted efforts to absolutely smoke Russian war industry and Russian critical infrastructure wherever it may be. We've been able to hear of major hits to the Livny refinery within the Oryol Oblast, as well as the Kosovo refinery south of Nizhny Novgorod, once again dealing serious blows to an already dying major economic system that exists within the Russian Federation. We have also been able to hear of other drone attacks that have occurred throughout the entirety of the Russian Federation, but we did not get exact video and picture evidence of those attacks. Meanwhile, we've also
saying that you don't want Ukraine as a financial advisor because they're causing Russia to go bankrupt faster than ever at this point with all these attacks. It's not going to go good for Russia. It's about to go bankrupt.
Man, Zelensky said, "This is not financial advice. It really isn't." And then just like blew up another refinery. He's like, it's a crazy thing. But we've also been able to hear, once again, to get y'all through the summary before we even get into the actual breakdown of the news, North Korean forces have withdrawn from the front lines in the Kursk Oblast today after suffering nearly 60% attrition rates over about a month and a half of fighting inside the Kursk Oblast. Once again, showing that the North Koreans are simply not prepared for modern warfare and may never be prepared for modern warfare. We have also been able to hear that the Ukrainians have stated that North Koreans tend to explode or spontaneously combust when nearly being captured by Ukrainian forces. A fairly interesting note. We have been able to see the Ukrainian armed forces have held their positions inside the Kursk Oblast, and we've also been able to see some significant fighting throughout most of the front lines, but the Ukrainians have largely been able to hold their positions, although unfortunately in Velika Novosilka today, we did see the Russian Federation raise their flag in the middle of the town, clearly indicating that the town was captured. We have also been able to see that more sabotage operations have been underway by the Russian Federation in the Baltic Sea, and a special ship arrived to help out with those counter-insurgency well, not really counter-insurgency, but more so counter-sabotage operations of the Baltic Sentry forces that are in the Baltic Sea at this moment. As you all can tell, the news summary took about 7 minutes to get through, and this is probably one of the busiest news days that we've ever seen in the history of the channel. But nevertheless, we are going to break down each and every story as they come, because every single one of them is massive, mind you. Like, we were actually having a very hard time making the title and thumbnail today, because we did not even know where to begin. So we are going to begin all the way over in East Asia, inside of South Korea, as we were able to hear a report from Yonhap News today, summarizing a statement from the President of the United States. And it appears that the office of the President of the United States is demanding the complete denuclearization of North Korea, according to Yonhap News. This is huge. As many of you all know, North Korea has been a nuclear-armed country since 2008, which ended the era of peace in between North and South Korea, which actually was being kindled quite strongly in the lead up to 2007 and 2008. And since then, the United States and a large number of countries have imposed the most serious sanctions possible on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, plunging them into an era of darkness for the large part technologically inside the country, and once again ensuring that North Korea, whether they wanted to or not, would have no access to the outside world. However, with the ushering in of these sanctions, there was also a change in leadership inside of North Korea, as Kim Jong-il would pass away in 2011, most likely to join Kim Il-sung in the depths of hell, and then was replaced by Kim Jong-un, who was the son of Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-un has leaned heavily into trying to flesh out the nuclear arsenal of North Korea and to follow the footsteps of his father's ambitions to create intercontinental ballistic missiles that were capable of striking the United States with the nuclear payloads that had now been successfully developed inside of North Korea. We are understanding at this point that the President of the United States is now seeking to denuclearize the entirety of North Korea, or else they will face some sort of serious consequences, the consequences of which are unknown. But they were made out to be...
That's what I'm thinking too. It's like, what are the consequences really? Because, that's the deal when countries obtain nuclear weapons, is the consequences to actually defeat that becomes pretty much non-existent at that point. Because if you start fighting with North Korea, they could lob a nuke at somebody. But, that would be an extreme step to take, but it's possible.
It is a very extreme step. We do not really know what the process forward with this would be, because there really is only one dire consequence we can levy against the North Koreans, which is some form of an armed conflict. We have already imposed the maximum amount of sanctions possible on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and that has been the case for well over a decade at this point. Any kind of further dire actions against North Korea would strictly involve military action, as all economic actions have already been exhausted against North Korea. So we do not know what the future holds with this demand that North Korea must denuclearize, and we also do not know whether this large demand is going to be followed through or not, or if the bluff will be called if it is a bluff. It may not be a bluff, and there may be a serious belief that the United States may conduct military action against North Korea here in the near future. However, that comes with serious consequences, as North Korea is a nuclear-armed country, and while we have seen that some of their ICBMs seem to have a pretty decent failure rate, there still is the chance that they could make it to the United States. The other issue is that the United States may be bluffing, and the North Koreans may call the bluff, and there will be no military action at all moving on from this point, because the United States would not want to conduct a war with a nuclear-armed country. There are a load of things that we really do not know about at this point with the news that came out today about the demand from the office of the President of the United States against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, but there is an ongoing theory in the background that this may be an attempt to create a diplomatic situation to force a leverage on the United States' behalf, so that way the North Koreans withdraw from the Russian-Ukraine war. That is a belief that's been held out there, and one that seems to be the most plausible, because beyond that, there really is no major diplomatic framework that this could fall under to see that the United States could be successful in this venture. Also, another additional thing that I forgot to add in is that there is an existent and binding treaty in between North Korea and the People's Republic of China, where if North Korea is attacked, the People's Republic of China will come to their aid militarily and actually join the war on the side of North Korea. So if the United States wanted to follow through with that bluff, we would most likely be going to war with North Korea and the People's Republic of China simultaneously, which could end up being a pretty big bite to chew for the large part of the United States, at least strategically, because we could also see that this war largely expands into a world war which encompasses the entirety of the Western Pacific, and we could see that the Chinese would attempt at that time to take the island of Taiwan, considering the conflict had already broken out in between the Axis forces of North Korea and China and the allied forces of the United States, NATO, and also our allies within the area of East Asia. So there is a lot to be said about this and many questions to be had, and it looks as though a lot of people are speaking about the United States seeking a denuclearization of North Korea in the very near future. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And it does seem as though there is a complete lack of public faith that the United States could ever enforce such an objective as denuclearization on North Korea. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so 53% of the audience said that the U.S. has absolutely no way to enforce a denuclearization of North Korea, while 24% said that the U.S. will enforce and can enforce it, while 15% said it's simply a bluff to calm down North Korea. And I don't think this is going to calm down North Korea one bit, because one thing you cannot do to North Korea, because it's a dictatorship, is publicly challenge the authority of the supreme leader. That is something that will send them off the cliff, and that's basically what this is. So it's going to cause tensions to flare up, and honestly, my theory was earlier, this was some type of way to send a shot across the bow to North Korea to basically warn them about their involvement in the Ukraine war, is to basically let them know that if they keep their activities up inside of mainland Russia and also in Ukraine, Ukraine, then the U.S. might put their targets and their sights on North Korea if they don't back off. I think this was an indirect way of threatening North Korea, but of course, I don't think it's going to take too much intelligence to realize there's really not much we can actually do to enforce a denuclearization of that country. So I think Kim is largely going to ignore this, but he would be wise to heed it, because I'm sure there are other ways through sanctions and food aid that we could probably put some pressure further on that country. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say that the United States does not really have a way to enforce this denuclearization demand, due to the fact that all of North Korea's backers are nuclear armed, and also due to the fact that North Korea is nuclear armed as well. This is generally why, just to explain this really quickly, you don't want countries to get nuclear weapons, at least smaller ones like North Korea, because it completely stops us from doing anything to them. And so there really is nothing that we can do without risking some form of a nuclear exchange. It's become very clear with the Korean People's Army's limited involvement in the Ukraine war that their military is far behind the curve. That is supposedly one of the most elite units in the Korean People's Army that is currently fighting inside of the Kursk Oblast, and just today it had to withdraw from the front lines because it took 60% attrition, from what we know, at least according to the numbers we have currently, in a month and a half, which is untold. It's unheard of to hear 60% attrition for an entire near division-sized element of a military in the modern age. Not even the Russian Federation, with the high casualty rates they take in the Ukraine war, suffered those kinds of losses in a single unit over that kind of period of time. And it is showing that the North Koreans militarily would not be able to handle any kind of a conventional conflict with South Korea, much less the United States. If the United States conducted a war against North Korea, it is very likely that the United States would rapidly steamroll over them, and that alone would panic the North Koreans enough that they would start to fire their intercontinental ballistic missiles at the United States. At that point, we would have to hope that there is some way that we can intercept those launches while they're taking off, or somehow find a way to destroy them in their mid-course phase as they were flying over the Pacific, which would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. So with that in mind, there would be a mass amount of casualties occurring inside the United States when the limited number of nuclear weapons North Korea has hits the United States. We would also, of course, respond and quite literally glass North Korea, as we've made it fairly clear a while ago that the U.S. nuclear strategy, at least within the government, is that it takes 28 nuclear weapons, I believe if I remember the number correctly, to completely decimate North Korea and destroy its population centers and everything else in between. And we would use exactly 28 nuclear warheads to completely level North Korea and destroy it to the core, including the citizenry. So with that in mind, we would, of course, completely destroy North Korea, but we would also then at that point be at war with the Russian Federation and China, as Russia did just a little while ago enter a mutual cooperation agreement, which also included a defensive pact with North Korea. So not only would China be involved in the war against the United States and our action against North Korea to force them to denuclearize, the Russian Federation would be as well. All three of those are nuclear armed. Of course, the Russians are a pushover. The Chinese are not necessarily a pushover within their regional area, and the North Koreans are quite honestly a joke. But out of those three, we still have three nuclear armed powers that could launch nuclear weapons at the United States if the situation became incredibly bad, at least for their side. So with that in mind, I have a feeling with just the amount of nuclear arms that are backing the North Koreans right now, this really wouldn't be a viable path forward. And we'll most likely see that the North Koreans call the bluff for that reason, and there probably will not be any further U.S. action on this, at least at the moment. Nevertheless, it is a major diplomatic incident, because we've never seen, at least in my recent memory, a U.S. president demand the denuclearization completely of North Korea. We've only seen sanctions, but that's it. Also, I want to address this really quickly before we move on down into Okinawa, that some people were saying, well, what if the U.S. cuts off food aid? We don't really provide food aid to North Korea anymore, especially after their involvement in the Russian-Ukraine war. We already weren't providing them food aid before that, and we certainly are not providing them food aid now. So we can't even withdraw food aid because we aren't providing them with any at the moment. So at this point, we have no leverage over the North Koreans beyond the threat of an armed invasion. So the dire consequences, we are assuming, have to be an armed invasion, or at least that's the threat, because that's the only thing we have left. We've exhausted every other option except for outright war with North Korea. So with that.
You know what's also interesting is the U.S. was talking about setting up a meeting with Kim Jong-un once again, like happened about 4 or 5 years ago, which was actually historic because it was the first time a president actually crossed over into North Korea on the ground in actually forever. I think that's the first time it ever happened. But now it looks like that there's not actually going to be probably any meeting between the U.S. and North Korea, and the fact that the talks about denuclearization have come out, that probably indicates that things are not going good behind the scenes with North Korea. And honestly, all the indications from pretty much everywhere around the world with adversaries is that talks are probably happening behind closed doors, but they apparently are not going well in pretty much any region right now because Putin is shutting off negotiations. North Korea appears to be clammed up. They're not even wanting to talk right now, and they're pretty much all going sideways, really. So kind of an interesting approach, and it kind of shows you where these countries are really standing in their mindsets.
I would have to say it is a really interesting thing to see how the world is kind of shifting. And I'll be honest, it seems as though the United States is having a very rough time in negotiations and talks with practically everyone at this point on what the future would look like, which does show, and I want to make this clear, once again, everyone, learning lessons here. Just because you believe you have a friendly relationship with a leader of a country does not mean that that translates into actually having any kind of power or influence with that country. Because, of course, we're not getting into politics here, but I would like to explain this. Many people believe that the current president of the United States was on friendly terms with Kim Jong-un and Putin in his prior term that he had from 2016 to 2020, which publicly did appear to be true. But just talking to someone at a meeting and laughing and joking with them a little bit does not translate into actually having any kind of meaningful control over these countries, especially if there's no major economic ties that follow with that or any form of military backing that actually would be enforceable because of a lack of nuclear weapons. So for this reason, once again, if anyone here ever gets into, I guess you could say, the political world, of running a country or the administration of it, please make sure to remember that just because you're able to go and talk and smile with a leader of a rival country or an enemy country does not mean that relations are good. It just doesn't turn into that because there's a many myriad of other factors that are involved in the background that largely guide those leaders' decisions beyond their personal affinity for another leader of another country. So with that, we are going to be moving on from North Korea and on down into Okinawa. Now, Okinawa is a fairly significant island as far as U.S. Chinese containment policies is concerned. It is a massive island as far as the Japanese island chain goes, down towards the area of Taiwan. Japan actually controls every single one of these islands in between Taiwan and Japan. But the most important one for the U.S. and Japan is Okinawa. Okinawa is the most populated and largest of the islands. And not only that, at Kadena Air Force Base, a massive amount of U.S. air power can be leveraged at any given moment to support U.S. military operations within the Korean Peninsula or in support of Taiwan, whichever direction. It is literally within the midway zone of both. And we have been able to hear recently that, according to reports, it appears that the People's Republic of China, the Communist Chinese on the mainland, are trying to spur some sort of an independence movement on Okinawa to try and remove U.S. and Japanese control from the island and to ensure that U.S. forces are much farther away from the island of Taiwan and are instead having to fly out of some sort of a mainland Japanese base or a mainland South Korean base instead of the one at Okinawa, which is quite honestly only a few hundred miles away from the island of Taiwan, meaning that U.S. response time would be minimal, at least in terms of air power. So with this in mind, it does appear that the Chinese are trying to play their little games. And also, not to plug like we're in the middle of like a NBC television premiere, but we are going to be putting out a video on Chinese influence in a different way on a different country here in the near future, most likely within a couple of weeks, in the Panama Canal. Because we have actually been able to finish out the script today. It most likely will be on Patreon here in the near future. So if you're on Patreon, you'll most likely get to see at least the cover page. But the script is done. It is around 3,000 words long, and it pretty much describes everything to do with why in the world the United States is beginning to eyeball the Panama Canal seriously for a possible recapture and once again to reinvigorate the Panama Canal zone. In the middle of researching that, I actually have to say that I will have to be fairly adamant and clear about this. Retaking the Panama Canal Zone is inherently within American strategic and economic interests at this time, because the developing situation with the Panamanian government and the relations with the People's Republic of China is wildly concerning at best. And that will be explained in depth in the video, but it is something of wild concern at this point. In fact, it seems as though U.S. Diplomats have been incredibly concerned about this since around the midpoint of the 2010s, around 2014 to 2015, when Chinese influence started to heavily arrive inside of Panama. And now it appears that the Chinese government has a very strong grip over the critical economic infrastructure of the country of Panama, meaning that Panama has an extremely strong hold to what the Chinese would like them to do or like them to say. So we are going to be...
Honestly, it's not just Panama. Like, China's got their tentacles pretty much everywhere these days. China's been playing the long game with geopolitics. They've got their tentacles in South America quite heavily. They've also got it here in Panama with the canal like you're talking about. And also, they're trying to get their tentacles in Europe and the entire continent of Africa. They've been doing that for over a decade at least now, probably longer than that. So it's really like disturbing to see how far China's advanced with their geopolitics and their influence over countries. And honestly, I'm not saying the USA is behind the time. Like, we'll still take care of it. We got it under control, but we have some catching up to do to catch right back up to where China's at currently, and basically trying to ward off their influence that they've gained over these several years, actually. So it's quite a lot of work to do, but the U.S. is knocking it out pretty fast right now.
Yeah, it is knocking it out pretty fast. Of course, speed comes with some consequences. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. But the United States is moving forward fairly rapidly at trying to secure economic and strategic interests around the globe. It's a fairly interesting thing. But that is what the documentaries are for and for explaining. So I hope that y'all will be able to see that when it comes out, because it is going to be insanely good. Matthew's on Greenland is going to be coming out first. But I will be putting out my video second. My video, I think, is... What is it, Matthew? It's like going to be 8 minutes longer, I believe. It's going to be around 20 minutes long. So I think it's going to be
I think it's going to be about 6 minutes longer. I think yours is going to be about 14 to 15 minutes probably. Mine's probably going to be more like maybe 10 minutes or so.
So it's going to be a little bit of a lengthier one, but there's a lot to explain about the Panama Canal, honestly, like even cutting it down as much as we could. But it's a very interesting thing. So with that, we are going to be moving on from the Panama Canal and that brief little plug for that video. Also, by the way, I do have to plug before we move on that Matthew is making a video on the U.S. and Greenland that will be coming out here really, really soon. We're talking about probably about a week from now or a little bit longer than that. So if you're wanting to know a lot about the U.S. reasoning for wanting to see Greenland security improved, or for the island of Greenland to be annexed by the United States and operated as an overseas territory, Matthew will be making a video on that and explaining what is up with that, and generally the kind of logic that is behind that, and also some of the caveats to that as well. It's a very interesting kind of a video. I've actually read the script. It's a very good script. And also, I've listened to the read-through, and it's a very good read-through. But moving on from that, and out of our plugs for our videos that are coming out here in the future, we are going to be moving out of East Asia, and we're now going to be moving on over into... Let's see here. What should we cover next? The Middle East is next on the list, but to be entirely honest with y'all, there's a lot going on in the world to the point it's really hard to say what's next. But we are going to go to the Middle East. I'm not going to sit here and try and decide on stream. Already decided before the stream. But moving on to the Middle East, we have been able to hear that the United States is planning on withdrawing all of its forces from Syria here within the near future. Currently, there's around 1,500 U.S. service members inside of Syria at this moment, and according to what we're hearing, they will now be withdrawing, most likely to allow the Syrian interim government to evolve without much U.S. interference. At least that's what we're assuming at its best right now. We have also been able to hear inside of Israel that around 90 Patriot missiles have been transported from Israel itself and into Rzeszów, Poland. If I pronounced that correctly, thank you. If I did not, I'm sorry, it will never be right. But nevertheless, around 90 interceptors have been transported to Ukraine, the largest amount ever shipped to the state of Ukraine in a single amount. It is showing that the United States is becoming heavily supportive of Ukraine having superior firepower to really deal with any threat provided by the Russian Federation in the future, as it's also become wildly clear that the Russian Federation is not going to be ending this war anytime soon. And we were able to get a statement from Putin today and it appears that it was not a good one. Zelensky actually had to call it out. But before we get on into Zelensky calling it out, it's better for us to describe what happened with the statement that Putin made. And here he is, looking like he's doing something very questionable on the chair. But beyond that...
It really does, honestly, you're right.
Dude, you know what it looks like he's doing? It looks like he's saying, oh my God, the X-Lex is hitting real hard today. It's just something like that. It's like, what is going on? Like, I don't even know what he was doing in this picture, but he was tripping or something.
Yeah, he really is, man. Looks like he's got to go. He's full of gas, like we said before.
Man, I gotta say. But still, Putin has stated that he is not going to be negotiating any kind of a ceasefire or any kind of a peace treaty because he calls the entire Ukrainian government illegitimate. And we're back to the literal playbook of 3 years. Like the playbook that's been tried by the Russians for 3 years, they're going right back to it again. And according to what he said, he claims the Ukrainian president can't participate in negotiations and cannot sign anything due to the illegitimacy of the Ukrainian government. So what he is saying at this point is that the United States can negotiate a peace without Ukraine present, and that's it. That's all that the Russians are willing to agree to. They state that the Ukrainian government is illegitimate, which is one of the active belligerent parties in this conflict. So they are going to negotiate the end of the war with the United States, which is supposed to be a third-party intermediary, and not with Ukraine, which is the active belligerent. And this is making it incredibly clear that the war is going to go on, because it has already been made clear by the President of the United States that any peace negotiations will involve Ukraine, because all parties have to agree to the peace treaty, all belligerent parties, that is. The United States' involvement in negotiating the treaty is important, but having Ukraine and Russia sign the treaty is the most crucial part. And so it does appear, from what we're understanding, that the Russian Federation is very adamant at this point on continuing the war. And it appears, Matthew, we once again had a new person come in saying, why do you keep yapping so much? It's like, well, it's the news. It's not a silent motion.
Show, buddy.
Listen, man, if you want to watch Charlie Chaplin, they got loads of those on Netflix. Or if you want to, go hang out with your girlfriend, I'm sure that's a silent film as well when you're in there. But nevertheless, moving on.
That's a violation.
That is a pretty severe one. But nevertheless, moving on from this, it is very clear that Putin is not looking to actually end the war, and he's looking to continue it well on into the future until Russian demands are met unconditionally, and that will never be accepted by the United States or the state of Ukraine for that matter, and that's been made very clear already. We have also been able to see that Zelensky immediately fired back and stated that today, Putin once again proved he fears negotiations, fears strong leaders, and is doing everything to prolong the war. Real peace is possible, but Putin is trying to avoid it. The world must act decisively. Russia must be forced into peace. And it is something that is very interesting to say, that the Russians appear to not be wanting to end the war at all, although they are getting absolutely obliterated by U.S. sanctions, the Ukrainian armed forces, and largely the lack of trade now that they're having with Europe because of the sanctions. They are getting obliterated economically and militarily, the only ways that a country truly can be brought to its knees. And nevertheless, Putin is still going to be adamant on largely continuing the war at all costs, not even attempting to conduct a peace negotiation to get the Russian Federation out of a war that is clearly unwinnable at this point. Maybe in the future.
Also, how can a country expect to have peace? Like, let's say Russia and Ukraine come to a peace agreement. If Putin is not even willing to recognize Zelensky's government as legitimate, then that already tells you up front that he is going to be back once again to get rid of that government if he can't get rid of it the first time. So that already shows you there is no peace talks to even be had here, because if Putin wants to oust Zelensky, that means basically he wants to overthrow the entire Ukraine government from the top down and basically find a puppet to install there that would basically be like Lukashenko in Belarus, but it would be that version of Lukashenko in Ukraine. So it's just not going anywhere. Like, we knew this already, but this is just more proof.
But you know what Putin would say? I want to tell you this because some of you are going to be like, well, wait a minute, what if the United States really does want to negotiate without the Ukrainian government present? What if it's like the Treaty of Munich, where they don't even ask the Czechoslovakians what they think, they just sign the treaty and the Germans get to pretty much annex the Sudetenland? That is not going to happen, because here's what the Russians are moving for. They are saying that the Ukrainian government is illegitimate. Let's go down the book like the United States takes this seriously. So the President of the United States goes, oh, really? He's illegitimate. Well, what would have to happen for the Ukrainian government to be illegitimate? And Putin would say, Why, actually, I think that we would have to make sure that the rightful president of Ukraine is installed, who is Viktor Yanukovych. And Viktor Yanukovych, if y'all do not know, and let me go get Viktor Yanukovych, because we already know that the Russians are going for this because they've said this in the past, and they've done this very playbook. Viktor Yanukovych looks like a Madame Tussauds figure, but he was once the president of Ukraine, right before the Euromaidan riots of 2014, or as they call it, the Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine. This guy was as pro-Russian aligned as it could get, and he actually is the reason and is the one responsible for Ukraine having the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, and he ended up actually fleeing the country and then living in exile from that point forward, even to this day, inside of the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation claims that he is the legitimate president of the state of Ukraine and was deposed through military coup in 2014, which did not happen. The Russian Federation, if the United States took their statement seriously that Zelensky's government is illegitimate, would insist that the Ukrainian government is removed that currently exists under Zelensky and is replaced by a government led by Viktor Yanukovych, which is an entirely Russian-aligned leader. Viktor would be pretty much ensuring that the state of Ukraine was already Russian-aligned and would give in to whatever demands the Russian Federation had off the bat. The United States would consider that unacceptable because that may as well be accepting complete defeat in the war because they would lose all governmental holdings over the state of Ukraine. And not only that, this would be impossible to actually enforce on the Ukrainian nation because this is the entire reason they're fighting a war today is this guy. So it would be a little bit insane to act like this guy would just peacefully take control in Ukraine, considering that he had to flee the country because the actual citizens of Ukraine hated the guy so much, they ended up revolting against him and actually pretty much throwing a revolution to throw him out. It was no military coup. At that time, the military, a little bit, was kind of on his side. It was the public that was against him, and he was so unpopular, the entire public leveraged their power against the government and threw the guy out. So with that in mind, this guy would never return. Ever. This is a pointless statement by the Russians. It's a dead end diplomatically. It will not go anywhere. The United States wouldn't allow it, and Ukraine wouldn't allow it. So this means that the Russian...
Also, to add insult to injury real quick, because I see people pointing this out in the comments right here, Yanukovych has had a really, really large garage full of retro cars and stuff like that, really expensive cars. The guy's actually pretty rich. He actually has a big garage with these really old cars in it. It actually got hit this morning, actually. His cars got smashed by, it was either a drone or a missile or something like that, and destroyed a whole bunch of them, which was sad to see from a car perspective, but it looks like people still don't like him. He's still getting smashed.
And I would have to agree. Also, another thing, I just saw someone say this. I just want to address this really quickly. Someone said, winning a war isn't easy. Someone said, we haven't won one in 40 years. I don't know where the hell they were. Was their head under a rock? Because I sure as hell guarantee you we won the Gulf War in 1991, hands down. So unless if they're just blind, I mean, that's literally one war that we quite easily won in the past 30 years. That's not even one where it's it's kind of questionable. I mean, did we leave the country? No, we legitimately won. We won. We forced the Iraqis out of Kuwait, destroyed the Iraqi army, and defeated Saddam Hussein in an actual war. It's that actually happened. That's a war that the United States has won in the past 4 years. That whole thing is a myth, saying that the United States hasn't won a war in forever, because we win wars all the time. For example, the invasion of Panama, when Panama declared war on the United States in 1989, and you heard that right, we didn't declare war on them, they declared war on us. And then we went down there and invaded them on December 20th. And we ended up not only capturing Noriega, who was the leader of Panama, we ended up ensuring that the Panama Canal Zone remained neutral and was open to U.S. trade. We won that conflict, I can promise you that. We also won a great deal of others. A great deal. And we could go through them all, but I won't bother y'all with that list, for it's an extensive list. But nevertheless, I do have to say that that's a little bit crazy to say that someone would say that we haven't won a war in the past 40 years, because we've won quite a decent number of them. It's just that the ones that we don't really win, or we just kind of sit there forever and then leave because we get tired of it, people don't like those, and so they only remember those. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into something else that happened today that might make fighting the war for the Russian Federation a little bit more difficult. But before we even get into that, it's kind of important for us to talk about something else entirely, which is Putin pretty much shooting down the idea of negotiations today with this baseless, erroneous, and egregious claim. I almost sound like that attorney, Matthew, from Seinfeld. It's egregious, atrocious, outrageous. But beyond that...
Jackie Childs.
Yeah, Putin calls to Al Zelensky as illegitimate and says that Ukrainian negotiations are meaningless. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this one. And folks are saying the negotiations are off. They're officially dead and they won't even make it to the negotiating table to even give it a try. Others are saying that negotiations are still possible, and some are saying that it's a little likely. And some are unsure and undecided, but many people appear to be in the camp that negotiations are a lost cause at this point, with the ridiculous Russian assertion that was made today. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking as well?
All right, so 69% of the audience, nice, said negotiations are officially dead, while 14% said negotiations are still possible, and 12% said negotiations are still likely. And honestly, I would say that negotiations between Putin and Zelensky, those are officially dead. That's never going to happen. That's pretty much clear at this point. Putin is literally saying that directly, so that will not happen. Now, what is likely to happen is Putin probably will secure a meeting with the U.S. president. That probably will happen, at least an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting of some sort. Or it might actually be limited to the phone, actually, depending on how scared Putin is to meet with somebody. So that will occur, but there will be nothing really fruitful out of it except for basically pissing the U.S. off because Putin decides to take a really hardline stance that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to say that pretty much the negotiations are off, but there will be some rumblings of at least some talks happening, but that'll be pretty much the end of the road for those talks. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, negotiations are completely dead at this point with that kind of a claim. The Russian Federation is never going to negotiate a peace on this standing with the Ukrainian government existing as it does, and we are not going to allow, as the United States of America, for a Russian puppet to lead the Ukrainian state. For these reasons, negotiations are off, and we will most likely see that the war continues on at this point without even a single attempt to try an actual peace talk, because the Russians are going hard line with the current president, much like they did the former president. And the current president is most likely going to follow down a fairly similar path to the prior president, which is to provide a large amount of arms support to the state of Ukraine so that way they can simply overpower the Russians through superior firepower. And not only that, we are going to be leveraging, thanks to the new Secretary of the Treasury, a brand new wave of crippling sanctions against the Russian Federation. The last ones were damning. These will be crippling, largely destroying the Russian Federation and ensuring that their major oil industries are no longer able to function with any kind of operational income, which will lead to a U.S.-Ukrainian victory. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion. And also, let's see. I also want to cover this real quick because I saw some people say a second ago, and while Matthew was talking, I had to go pull it up. Some people were like, the U.S. has never won a war in 40 years. And some people wanted to insist that that was true. And I want to just show you all this real quick, just a few, because these are some of the wars in the past 40 years. So the U.S. invasion of Grenada, all of y'all know that one. It's a cult classic, U.S. victory. Everyone knows that one. Well, we bombed Libya. That one was for funsies, though, so that was just inconclusive. The tanker war, where we ended up obliterating the Iranian Navy in Operation Praying Mantis, that was a U.S. victory. Quite honestly, hands down, a winner. We destroyed half the Iranian Navy in 30 minutes. I'd call that a win. The U.S. invasion of Panama, that was a victory. We got Noriega, and we deposed him. We won. The Gulf War, hands down a victory. There's just no question about that. We beat their asses. The Iraqi no-fly zone enforcement was also a victory, and that actually lasted for a little bit around 12 years. Once again, major victory, mind you. We did incredibly good.
The only question on the Gulf War, though, because most people claim it's a decisive victory, but Saddam remained in power during the Gulf War. So was that really a victory, or was it like a partial victory?
No, we won completely. The plan, the intention was not to depose Saddam Hussein. That was the intention with the invasion of Iraq in 2003. The Gulf War was simply to enforce international law and to remove Iraqi forces from the unlawful occupation of the Kingdom of Kuwait. That was the entire purpose of that war, and that war goal was achieved. So there was never a plan or an intention in the first Gulf War to capture Saddam Hussein or depose him from power. That was a complete U.S. victory, according to our initial war goals and claims that were made. And you can even see that before the war was won. A reporter asked Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the coalition commander of all Allied forces in that war, they asked him before it was even over. They said, well, now that we've pretty much wiped out the Iraqi Iraqi army and they're trapped in Kuwait. Are we going to go up to Baghdad and take Saddam Hussein? And he said, no, that is not the goal at all. So that was never a war goal, even in the middle of the conflict or before the conflict, to depose and remove Saddam Hussein at the time. So that was...
I think it would maybe be a more accurate statement to say that the last war that the United States won in like a total victory scenario was World War II, because the other ones could be argued that they weren't complete total victories. Like, for example, the Korean War, it ended in an armistice, and the Vietnam War, you know, it looks like North Vietnam took over South Vietnam. In the Gulf War, you had, of course, Saddam was not taken out of power. I know you said that wasn't the goal of it, but he wasn't taken out. Although on that one, it's arguable. Like, honestly, the Gulf War, I think, could be considered a victory, like you said. But the Iraq War, we did remove Saddam, but also Iraq is like all over the place. There wasn't any stability brought to Iraq. So it could be considered a victory. But honestly, and also, by the way, the Afghanistan War, that one was fought for like, what, 20 years or something like that, 19, 20 years. And the Taliban ended up coming back to power at the end of it. So I don't know, like some of those wars, like they seem like they could be argued as both.
I would say not, because if you're saying that total victory is the only victory, that means that the U.S. Revolutionary War is technically a defeat, because we didn't go to Britain, invade the United Kingdom, and overthrow King George III and disband the Parliament, which means that...
No, I'm talking about total victories. Like, I think when these people say, like, the last time we won a war, I think they mean, like, a total victory, not like, you know, like we sort of won part of it, and then we sort of lost some of it.
But this was an unconditional victory. Like, the Iraqis ended up having to agree to every one of our demands. Like, there wasn't a demand that we did not achieve. So that is a total victory by all margins. Like if you, like, World War II is a rare instance, because never in really any war that the U.S. has ever fought, very rarely have we ever gone to the point of deposing or destroying a government and then rebuilding a new country out of it. Like, that's just... Like, that's wildly rare for anyone. I mean, if that's like the moniker of victory, the U.S. has won, like, no wars then, except for a handful, like the U.S. Civil War and World War II, and maybe World War I, if you want to count that. But that would be, that's like an incredibly high mark. Like, a victory is a victory. If you defeat the enemy on the battlefield and force them to accept your terms unconditionally, whatever those terms are, if they accept all of those, that's a total victory. The Gulf War is a total victory for those reasons.
I wouldn't say it's a total victory. I'd have to disagree. We achieved a lot of our objectives, but once again, Saddam remained in power. I know you're saying that wasn't the objective to get him out of there, but that would have been a good thing to accomplish to actually bring stability to the area. But he was left remaining there until the Iraq War, and we literally returned just 10 years later to get him out of there because it was so uncertain.
Well, yeah, but then you could say that that's just a continuation of the Gulf War, and it was a total victory because we just went in there, occupied the whole country for 10 years, and then executed them. Like, you know,
you can say that, but I think I just disagree with you on that.
I don't know why. I mean, like, this is literally a complete coalition victory. I mean, literally by all the war goals we had going in, we won. There's no question about that. Like, anyone who denies that is honestly denying reality, because, you know, like, this is, like, if you look at that and say, no, I don't think we won, like, I don't know what winning looks like.
Well, I mean, it's just your opinion, not really.
Well, no, I mean, like, if you win a war and you enforce an unconditional surrender onto the Iraqi government and you get all of your demands ensured, that's a victory. There's no way to look at that as a defeat. You know, like, that's like saying in World War I, you know, we didn't march into Berlin and kill the Kaiser. We just negotiated him out and then put in the Weimar government, so we really didn't win. Like, that's kind of like a similar argument.
Well, I mean, I can disagree with it, but I mean, personally, I think it wasn't a total victory. I mean, like I said, we achieved a lot of objectives, but it was not a complete total victory. So I think we're just going to have to disagree on that.
Run a poll on that. Like, I'm interested on that. Run a poll on that. I want to see what people think about that. But anyways, moving on from that and into the rest of the news, it doesn't really appear that the Russian Federation is going to have a way to really negotiate the war or fight the war on their own terms until the conclusion, because we have been able to see that the Ukrainians once again launched another crippling drone attack inside the Russian Federation. And we were able to see that this attack hit practically everywhere throughout the Russian Federation. We were able to hear that there were drone attacks in Voronezh, Tver, Oryol, Belgrade, and the Kursk regions. The Russian Federation claims that they took down 32 drones, but that claim is most likely dubious. And we were able to see some of the footage here. We do not know what town this was from, so I just kind of put this down as the general, I guess you could say, drone footage, but we are going to get into the details of some of the crippling blows that the Russians were dealt in just the past few hours. Dang! Ole moly! And we see the car alarms going off.
Бля, дрон летит нахуй. Бля, запиши нахуй. БПЛА это, да? Да. Дрон летит, блядь. Бля, не видно.
And we see them looking out in the skies, listening to the drones right there. And that's the end of the clip, but still fairly interesting to see. And moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see within the Oriel area around Livny that it appears that one of the larger refineries within the oblast was hit quite significantly. Livny is a fairly small town within the eastern area of the Oriel Oblast, and it does appear at the moment that there is a significant refinery that was hit and damaged within this area, and we'll be showing y'all the clip right here. And we hear the drone whizzing on in. And that's the end of the clip, but a very significant hit. And we'll actually be showing y'all the damage here, right here.
Где-то со спиртзавода хуярит. Или с Белами. Со старого моста откуда-то летит. И тут раз оттуда летел. Во, где-то идет, где-то уже близко. Во, где-то здесь вообще, над нами. Ой.
And we hear the drone flying on in.
Вот, ёпта. Ебать он какой, да ну нахуй. Ебать, как самолет, нахуй, ебать. Опять полетел туда. Ёпта, ты такой нахуй, пятый, ёпта. Это уже пятый. 3 дома и 2 на улице. Глянь, я его заснял вообще четко.
And that's the end of the clip, but still a very interesting thing to see. Meanwhile, outside of the area of eastern Oriel, we did get to see near Nizhny Novgorod, in the southern area of the town at Kosovo, that it appears that another significant oil refinery was also hit in this area, and it appears that the entire complex was ablaze. Unfortunately, I was not able to get oil production numbers before the stream began, but we do believe that this oil refinery is most likely within the mid-range of normal amounts of barrel per day oil production, which is somewhere around 180 to 250,000 barrels of oil every single day. It is a very nice thing to see that the Ukrainians are once again hitting more major oil refineries throughout the territory of the Russian Federation, as it does seem that the Ukrainians are still driving Russian oil industry to their knees, with around 15 to 20% of all Russian oil refineries within the Russian Federation being knocked out at this point. That means that right now the Russian Federation is losing around 800 to 1 million barrels of usable fuel products per day as they continue to bleed massive amounts of oil, as the Russian Federation is simply not able to produce enough usable fuel products, or import them for that matter, to keep Russian strategic reserves at a steady level. This does mean that over time, and we are already seeing this, Russian gas prices will begin to rise as they are not able to meet the amount of demand with the amount of production, and this will start to slow down the Russian economy as those prices begin to rapidly rise. If I am correct, and I'm not really sure if I am, I believe that the Russian Federation actually allowed Gazprom to raise the gas prices, if I'm correct, Matthew.
Say it one more time.
I believe that they actually allowed them to raise the gas prices, if I was hearing that correctly a little while ago.
I haven't gotten confirmation on that. I would say that they probably haven't. I haven't heard that officially, so I don't think so.
I think I may have heard that, but I might be wrong on that. But beyond that, it still is showing that the Russian Federation is having an incredibly difficult time having to deal with the major issues that are being caused by Ukrainian attacks on the most critical part of the economy, which is the oil industry. But moving on from that and on into the area of the Baltic Sea, or more so, actually, we'll move on to something a little bit more funny, I guess, before we move on into the Baltic Sea. Up around the area of Murmansk, as many of y'all know, it is currently frozen over in the North Sea, and I believe, let me make sure that we're getting this correct, the Barents Sea, which is used heavily by the Russian Federation at this point for maritime traffic. Considering that the Russian Federation only has one warm water port that is technically usable within the area of the Black Sea, which is Novorossiysk, which is a medium-sized port, the Russian Federation is heavily leaning on their frozen ports or cold water ports of St. Petersburg, Murmansk, and Arkhangelsk to continue the critical supply of oil and other kinds of exports to try and keep the Russian economy going. This means that keeping the sea channels to Murmansk, Arkhangelsk, and St. Petersburg are vitally important. And the Russians actually have a special fleet of icebreakers that they deploy throughout the areas of the northern regions of their country to make sure that these ice channels remain open. And we can actually show you all one of those Russian icebreakers right here. And let me go see if I can find it. And here it is. This is actually one of the exact classes that we're about to be talking about here in a second. These things, wildly enough, are actually run by Rosatom. You can actually see that on the side here. And these are nuclear-powered icebreakers, some of the few nuclear-powered icebreakers in the world. But these are vital to the Russian Federation's abilities to be able to keep their sea channels open and ensure that a larger amount of maritime trade is able to make it to their ports and to be able to keep money flowing into the Russian economy, and not only that, to also ensure that vital materials can still be shipped in through the shell companies that are operating elsewhere. And it does appear at this point that there's been a bit of an issue with that. The Russian Federation sent out one of their icebreakers in the middle of the night to start clearing out a way to Murmansk, and it doesn't really seem that that went all too well. Y'all can kind of see where this is going right here. And we can see the ice tank, the icebreaker making its way up to the cargo ship. And, oh, hitting it right there, dead on the nail. And you see the icebreaker now backing off. It appears that the bottom of the crane has taken some pretty decent damage, but the icebreaker took incredibly significant damage, as it, of course, ended up running directly headlong into the side of this merchant vessel. We do not know if the merchant vessel was hit below the waterline by the wave breaker on the front of the bow. We do not know that, and we do not know the fate of that merchant ship, but we were able to see the icebreaker in the early morning hours limping its way back into the port of Murmansk, and the damage was significant. It appears that
that guy's literally looking straight out the side of the hull at this point.
Dude, this guy's like, well, I never thought that my berth would be a open window room, Like, he's like, man, this is incredibly nice. But still, it is fairly interesting. You see, here's the entirety of the Pobiedi, which means victory. That's what the icebreaker is called, in its entirety, and showing you all the amount of damage that was caused by the merchant ship. But it does appear that this icebreaker may be put out of action for a while to undergo a refit for this to be repaired. It is likely, however, considering the high demand for the icebreakers, that this icebreaker may just be pushed right back into service without any repairs being affected to this part of the vessel, considering that the waves aren't incredibly serious wherever this icebreaker is operating most times, and the amount of water logging that would happen because of the breach in the hull would most likely be insignificant, and it would probably be dealt with by the bilge pumps inside of the vessel. But still, it is a pretty wild thing to see that they ended up almost knocking out one of their very own icebreakers today by running into a merchant ship. Once again, we still do not know the fate of the merchant ship that is currently still stricken by the icebreaker. We believe it made it into Murmansk, but no real information has come out about what happened to that ship, whether it ended up being, having one of its watertight hulls punctured, or whether it made it into Murmansk without any major damage to the actual waterline area of the ship or the below waterline area of the hull. So with that in mind, still an interesting thing, and once again showing us that drunk Russian captains just aren't the best thing to have. But before we move on into the next one, I do see that we have a load of questions from folks who are here in the chat with us tonight. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first question of the night. This one goes to Richard Hawkins, who puts in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Richard, for that support. He said, nice report about Okinawa and the Panama Canal, and the Chinese are everywhere.
And I got to thank you so much for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the reports on Okinawa and the Panama Canal. It's something that's really underplayed a lot today in modern news, the Chinese influence that's being seen around strategically important U.S. regions, such as Okinawa, Taiwan, or even the Panama Canal, which has really gone completely unmentioned, although if you look around, it has easily been talked about by loads of people who are involved in the diplomatic realm, saying that these things are major risks and concerns. And it is something to really say, without a shadow of a doubt, that the Chinese have to be countered and dealt with as much as they possibly can be within these regions. And so the United States dealing assertively around the area of Panama, or really the issue of Panama, as well as the island of Okinawa, is of course a serious concern. And I got to thank you so much once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling day in and day out. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again, and a huge thanks to you for supporting the Enforcer channel and making sure that we can say that the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, really quickly, before we move on to the next one, I've seen that a load of people have been talking about the discussion that we had about the invasion, really more so the Gulf War of 1991, and a whole bunch of things around it. I actually have been trying to look a little bit off screen, and it actually does appear that while I was acting a lot like it was a straightforward answer, some people have actually said a lot on the internet. There's actually a decent amount of argument there that Matthew's side is also right, and it doesn't really appear that there's a clear answer to that. Some people say what I was saying, that a total victory was achieved because we were able to ensure all of our demands. But some people also said that there was really a serious move at the time after a bomb was found, or a bomb was attempted to be planted onto Schwarzkopf's helicopter, that the war goals actually were supposed to have been modified to depose the Iraqi government, but they were not, so that way they could still claim a quick and easy victory. So it actually is a little bit more in depth than I was saying. So really sorry about that, Matthew, because I did not mean to start getting really
it's all
dogged
good.
about that.
No, my point earlier was just to say I think both sides can be argued. Like, for example, I see the side, some people say it's a victory, some people say it's not a victory, because only, and like I said before, most objectives were obtained in the war. Like the Iraq war, most objectives were obtained, except for that one objective right there of getting Saddam out of power. And I know some people in the chat are saying, oh, that wasn't the objective. But I think that was an objective, or otherwise we wouldn't have to return back in 9 more years to get him out of there. So it may have not been, crucial to saying it was a victory. That's why I said I can see both sides of it. So no, I don't necessarily like disagree with what you're saying, but I can see the other side at the same time.
Oh yeah. Like I can see where it's coming from at this point, for sure. Because I was trying, that's some of y'all may have been noticing my talking was robotic. That's because I was trying to pull up on the second screen some additional info, because it does appear that there really is no clear answer to that question. So while I was sitting there, and I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean? Because I've always heard that it was a complete total victory. It does seem as though there is a decent discussion out there about it. So, and also I see some people asking for a poll. Nah, I don't think there really is a need for a poll on that. I was wanting to see what the results would be, but to be honest, it seems like there's a 50-50 split out there on the internet for the answer. So there's really no point in a poll, because it's not like there's really a clear-cut answer to that anyways amongst the people who are actual historians in the Gulf War. So with that,
well, honestly, I will tell you that I believe most people would actually agree with your perspective. Most people would view that as a victory, but there is like that 40% or 30% of people out there that do find or do believe that since every single objective wasn't obtained, then it was not a total victory. But it's just really a matter of semantics, really. I mean, ultimately, though, we achieved most of our objectives in the Middle East. That's why we have such a stronghold in Israel. So, I mean, it's not like we necessarily lost as in we got run back home or something like that. But it's not that every single objective was obtained. So it's just a matter of preference, your perspective, and all that stuff. So no, I don't hard disagree with you on that. It's just a little bit of a difference between the two sides.
Yeah, it's just the difference. Also, by the way, no one ought to be given any kind of crap to either side. I've seen people throwing crap at me and Matthew. A disagreement's just a disagreement. That is what it is. It's nothing big. You have to, go out of your way to be rude about that, because being rude is against the channel rules for the large part and will generally be dealt with a ban. So I know that one was a bit more of a contentious topic, and folks were throwing mud around all in the live chat after that, but it is just a discussion. People can agree to disagree, and if they don't agree, It's just as easy as that. So I don't want anyone to be thinking that there was any kind of like an actual real serious argument there, because it was just a discussion like any other. But anyways, moving on from that, I do understand, man, that we have another juicy super chat to cover. And so what do we got?
All right, so our second super chat, the first segment here, goes to none other than Gunfox, who's, of course, a longtime channel legend, and he puts in that very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for the support yet again. And he said, also, of course, by the way, it's the days in history, if I can speak, but Gunfox says, January 28th of 1986, the STS-51L Space Shuttle Challenger and her crew was lost after 73 seconds, and Francis R. Scobie, I believe, Michael J. Smith, Ellison S. Onizuka, as well as Judith A. Resnick, as well as Ronald E. McNair, Gregory B. Jarvis, S. Krista McAuliffe, I think, and also the 10th mission for Challenger.
And thank you so much for the support, Gunfox61, and helping this channel to keep on running with another day in history, a space day in history. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And some very interesting stuff to hear. And of course, unfortunate to hear that on this very day, the Challenger was lost after 73 seconds of flight, which is an incredibly unfortunate thing. And I got to thank you so much for the support, though, and sharing that with us, because once again, it shows us that space is not an easy thing to conquer. Even getting to space is an incredibly difficult and dangerous task sometimes. And of course, it's an amazing thing to think that all of those spacefaring people of the United States continue to show a great deal of pride and a great national prestige point for the United States of America, and continue to face the challenges and risks every day to ensure that the United States can show that it is the preeminent power within space. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, Gunfox61, we wouldn't be able to talk about such a thing. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have tonight.
All right, so our last one in this segment goes to Flowers, who puts in also a very generous $50 super chat as well. And thank you very much, Flowers, for that support. And I said, I love seeing the show, and I love to see how you've taken it from such a small channel and made it into a big community. And also, I wish you the best of luck, Enforcers, and I'm going to work, and have a good night.
Hey, and thank you so much for the massive support, Flowers, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you so much for the kind words. It's come a long way. I think it's come a really long way since you and me talked a long time ago, but I got to thank you so much for being here tonight and supporting the channel, and I got to thank you for enjoying what Matthew and me have done. I got to say that it has been one hell of a journey. We actually, Matthew, funnily enough, was able to hear that someone we didn't even know was watching the channel, which is pretty cool, but beyond that, I got to say that it's absolutely amazing to have run this channel and to have done this for 3 years, but most importantly, it would not have been possible without Enforcer Matt here all the time helping out. He helps out with things behind the scenes that are incredibly difficult. A lot of y'all don't even see, but it helps to make this channel possible. So really, without Matthew and me, this thing wouldn't have been possible. And I got to thank you so much once again for that massive support in helping this thing to keep on running, because you're helping us to both keep this thing going, keep the lights on, and to make sure to keep the news coming out each and every single day. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the remainder of the news. And we have been able to hear today within the area of the Baltic that another cable was cut today by the Russian Federation. And to read you all the exact information that we have, another undersea cable has been cut in the Baltic, and the vessels of Russia's Shadow Fleet have been spotted again in the area of the accident. A telecommunications cable between Sweden and Latvia laid along the floor of the Baltic Sea has been severed, and suspicion has fallen on the cargo vessel, the Vesion, which is seen right here. And of course, this is allegedly. The ship sails under the Maltese flag, but is part of the Putin's so-called Shadow Fleet. Once again, allegedly, according to what we know. It is currently detained in Karlskrona, where Swedish authorities are investigating the latest incident. U.S. officials have appointed to Russia's main directorate for deep-sea research as a potential source of such sabotage operations. Russia's underwater sabotage capabilities, GUHI, a top-secret division equipped with specialized ships, submarines, and unmanned naval drones, pose a significant threat. The GUHI, a branch of the Russian Ministry of Defense, was founded in 1963 and has long been regarded as an elite and highly secretive unit. Last year, NATO countries also suspected Russian and Chinese vessels of being involved in severing undersea cables in the region. Once again, it's a serious concern, and we were able to see the cable link right here. This is the area that was actually severed in between the Gotland Island and the Latvian mainland, but there is a larger segment that actually travels all the way to Stockholm. It does appear that the Russian Federation is still conducting acts of sabotage within the area, from what we understand. And it does appear that NATO is still investigating this possible culprit, which has been apprehended and is currently within the area of the port of Karlskrona, within the southern coast of Sweden. We have also been able to see something that was very interesting, however, in the area of the Denmark Strait. Something that actually would be of great interest to many of y'all. Some folks have said, who is going to put a stop to this Russian madness? And many people have said that the Enforcer channel will, and that we will sail straight into the Baltic and end this thing once and for all. Well, crazily enough, your prayers have been answered, because the Enforcer was actually spotted in the Baltic not that long ago.
Hey,
right there.
look at that.
Hey!
The Enforcer flying the wrong flag, but that's okay, though. It's still the thought that counts.
No, wait a minute. We're Americans, Matty, right? You know, like we wake up in the morning, we say hello to the red, white, and blue. Look at this. Red, white, and blue. Hey!
I mean, it's just in the wrong order, but yeah, it counts.
Man, it's kind of like we're here. I mean, it's crazy. This is actually a Dutch ship, interestingly enough. And let me go see if I can find y'all the Dutch ship Enforcer to show y'all a picture of it, because let's see here. So, I did find this before. Wait, hang on. Hold up. Oh, shoot. Wait a minute, hang on. I think this... Okay, so this is not... let's see here.
Also, we are getting absolutely brigaded right now. Let me quickly go turn on our air defenses. We're getting brigaded by a crypto bot, a whole farm right now, an entire farm. That's a bit of a problem. Let me try to get to the YouTube control
Oh my
panel.
lord. Dude, they're flying in like, jeez.
Yeah. YouTube's got a problem with that. I've never seen that happen before in the entire 3 or 4 years we've been on YouTube. So let me quickly try to get to the control panel real quick.
Have you ever
Everything's going slow, of course. Okay.
Have you ever bought crypto?
We got air defenses on, folks. Are they gone? Or are the bots gone?
Are they gone? I've seen one chat come in, so I'm guessing yes. But I actually found the Enforcer ship. It's this one.
Ah, so it's a bit of a rinky-dink container ship, but it's I guess that's Enforcer. It works.
I guess it counts. I mean, like, the odds of a ship being in the Baltic Sea called the Enforcer is highly unlikely. So the fact that it was even there was pretty cool. But beyond that, I gotta say, pretty impressive to see. There also is an Enforcer ship design that is actually used by the Royal Navy, the Royal Australian Navy, the Spanish Navy, and the Dutch Navy right here. This entire class is called the Enforcer class, and it's an amphibious support ship. So a bit of a niche class, but still fairly interesting. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we were also able to see within the area of Slovakia that today we've heard that the Slovakian president has stated that Zelensky is an enemy. Of course, he's already Russian aligned. That was no shock, so it wasn't anything new to hear him say something like that, but still, it was pretty interesting to see that he actually made the direct statement today in a quote. But moving on from that, we also were able to see that Belarus has set up dragon's teeth along their border, as it appears that they are preparing some sort of defensive element for a possible war with Ukraine that may or may not happen, and it most likely will not happen. Now you see the dragon's teeth here. They actually got a lot of people taking pictures of them. It seems it's like a photo op than anything.
What's this sign say, Bliat? I couldn't read it.
I don't know. I think it says stop.
Oh, yeah, it looks kind of like a stop sign a little bit. I can't tell, though. I can't read that language, so I don't know.
Man. Stoy? I don't know. Like, it looks like it says stop or stoy. I don't know. But that's the end of that clip right there, and still fairly interesting to see. Moving on from that, we were also able to see that the Ukrainians were able to shoot down a large amount of drones last night as another Russian air raid was being conducted. And we can see them slamming them here. And we can see, oh, dang.
Damn.
Man, that thing was a bust, but nevertheless, great to see the air defense doing its job and once again knocking out more Russian drones. We were able to hear that the North Koreans have officially retreated from Kursk after suffering heavy losses, according to Sky News today. Instead of surrendering, most of them spontaneously combusted due to a grenade being pulled. So it appears that the North Koreans really are not apt to surrender, showing that most of them are ideologically brainwashed for the large part, and we have to generally assume that the entirety of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has been severely brainwashed at this point, to the point that we're not really necessarily dealing with individuals with free will, but we're most likely dealing with people who have been completely indoctrinated into the Juche cult for the large part and following it to the letter. We have also been able to see in the area of Suja that the Ukrainians have still been hitting Russian forces significantly. Here's one of the clips. And we see them hitting it right there. Pretty nice. And we're able to see in the next clip here. And it looks like they hit it. It looks like it was kind of like a grazing hit. And we now see a vehicle burning in the fields. We're not really sure if it was the last one that was just hit.
I don't know what is going on tonight, man, but the bots are like flooding here like crazy. Like I've deleted maybe in the last like 5 minutes, maybe about 100 plus bots. It's crazy. Not just the crypto bots, but other ones too, like pro-Russian bots.
Dang, dude. I wonder if there's a new bot farm that's been opened recently. Maybe that's it.
Could be. Putin's realizing that it's not going well for him, so it's time to unleash the AI bots, I guess you could say.
Man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But we see here the Ukrainians continuing to hit Russian fortifications with more FPV drones. And that's the end of the clip right there, but still very interesting to see. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we were also able to see the Russians getting hit in Kursk as well in another clip by another drone unit. This one, the first detachment of the 8th Special Purpose Regiment. And we can see here one of those Chinese mules, and it got hit pretty heavily. And we can also see here some sort of an APC. It looks like a BTR-80, and the drone hit right behind the turret, most likely knocking out the crew. We now see them going after a Buhanka and taking that out as well. And another Buhanka. And another one. Oh, that one's already toasting. And we now see them hitting another BTR. And we can see them hitting another one. And we can now see them going after a Russian supply truck. And I don't know what was in the back of that thing, but they took it out. We also see them hitting another one.
Oh, look at this one. It's loaded down heavy.
Man, that thing, that the suspension was leveling out. Like, it's like, dang. But they hit it right there. Very impressive. And that's the end of the clip, but still very interesting to see. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we were also able to see near Bolshoi Soldatskoye, the Ukrainians, crazily enough, for one of the few times, intercepting a fiber optic drone. Right there is the fiber optic drone. You can actually see them circling it, and the Ukrainian drone is attempting to take it out before it makes it to Ukrainian positions and hits them. And we can see here that it appears that it's getting fairly close to a Ukrainian position of some kind, and the Ukrainian drone is still trying to chase it down. And we can see right here, the drone is lining up. And we can see them continuing to try and line the thing up. Oddly enough, the Russian drone looks fairly Ukrainian in design, and just has a large bomb strapped to the bottom of it.
Looks like a bee or something.
Actually, I think that's the fiber optic spool.
Really? Is that the spool is that large?
Yeah, it looks like it because they have a mortar round up here, and then this is like some sort of like a bulbous like container, and you can see the fiber optic cable kind of right there a little bit. So I think that's a spool for the thing, and it just unravels as it flies.
Huh.
I never knew that. I've never seen a fiber optic drone up close before. Oh, wait a minute, no, wait a minute, hang on. This is the spool. You can actually see the wire right back there. So it actually comes out of the back of this black cone. So that's what it is. That's actually pretty neat.
That is kind of interesting. It's like literally just putting like just a big wire spool in the back of a drone. It's crazy.
Man, they said, "Bliet, put your spool." It's like, man, I've never seen anything like this before.
Spool it up, bliat, like a turbo on a lot of bliat.
Man, Bliet, I tell you, man, Bliet. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some North Korean equipment that had been captured off of some of the North Korean soldiers that did not surrender. But here it is. It's not a lot, but it's honest work. An AK-12 with mags and papers. It also appears that they had a Baofeng radio and some sort of an optic. Not like an optic on the gun, but some sort of like a spotter sight or something along those lines. Moving on from that, we also get to see their papers. We can see that all of them are in Korean. And we can also see some of their additional equipment here. This looks like it may be a night vision optic provided by the Russians. Battery charged, mind you. We can also see another form of an optic here. The Baofeng and the optic, the spotter sight, or the spotter scope, if you want to call it that. We can also see some sort of an instruction list in North Korean. Well, in Korean, but most likely in the North Korean dialect, so we'll call it North Korean. And we also get to see a letter that was written. It appears that there was some sanguinary fluid, maybe some organic brake fluid that appears to have gotten onto the letter in its final moments. And we can also see the vest, which doesn't appear to have a bulletproof plate inside of it. It just appears to be the vest. So a little interesting, and that's what we're assuming the normal North Korean is wearing at this point. But moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we were also able to see a couple of more interesting ones. We got to see the Fort Special Forces right here. If it loads. And it loaded. Take a look at this. They are in training. And we can see that their faces are blurred, but their patriotic fervor certainly is not blurred. And we can see it in all of these pictures. Just absolutely incredible stuff. Really cool. Moving on from that, we also got to see some civilian vehicles in service with the Russian armed forces. And this is another Rodniks session, Bliet. Let's take a look. Oh.
Oh, bliat, it's the soccer mom van stuck in the mud, bliat. It looks like he got into a sticky situation.
Man, he's stuck. And we see this. Jesus Christ. Dude, that is the worst Buhanka pickup I've ever seen. This is truly the worst.
It's got the guy standing in the back like they're on an amusement park ride.
Dude, they honestly are, man, because that thing flips over, they're going to be spinning. What the hell type of a gun is that?
I don't even know. It's white.
Dude, this guy brought out Papa's white shotgun made of ivory out here to the battlefield. I don't even know what the hell that is. And also, there appears to have been a Lada that had an unfortunate run-in with some Gopniks because all the wheels are gone, and it appears that it's on cinder blocks. So I assume that thing had an unfortunate run-in with Gopniks. But nevertheless, a very interesting Rodnik segment. But y'all thought it was done. We've got another. We got another right here. Let us take a look. Whoa.
Look at that. What the hell is that? It's an abomination. It's got 2 axles on the back. Why would you need 2 axles for like a car? Like, where's the logic?
Man, what is that 6-wheeled G-Wagon called?
Oh, like the Mercedes 6x6, that thing they have in like Saudi Arabia?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just the Mercedes 6x6, I think.
Man, this thing is the Blyatnik 6x6. It's just like, it's the revolution in Russian transport.
Look at it. It's going so fast. It's like freaking looking at like a go-kart.
Whoa, wait a minute, what was that? Oh, dude,
like
they cut a hole in the roof.
Oh my god. It's like, they're trying to replicate the Austrian painter's car, but it's not quite long enough.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Dude, it's...
Whoa, wait a minute, go back. What was that?
It was a Ural. Hang on. It was a Ural 4320 covered in stuff. Like, I don't even know what that is.
I don't even know what it is either, to be honest, man. It looks like a mix between like a dump truck and a normal Russian military truck. I can't really tell, but it's hideous.
Dude, what are they carrying behind it? What is that? Like, it's like being towed.
An abomination. The next chassis for the next Bliatmobile.
Dude, you and me are turning into Paladin Dance from Fallout 4. It's like, what is that thing? An abomination. It's like, dang. But also, I like the soccer mom minivan following behind. A lot of pickup. Oh. Oh. So what's the next one?
Also,
Okay.
that road was sketchy as hell, by the way. It was like collapsing on both sides, but they were driving over it like no problem.
Man, your average Russian road. Like, to them, man, they're like, this is just my normal hometown, Bliat. Like, this is it. A Buhanka pickup, and then a whole bunch of other destroyed Russian vehicles. Nothing really cursed here because it's just all burnt. But nevertheless, a very sad sight to see, the Russian road accession, but I get a laugh out of it. And so moving on from that and into our last bit of location unknowns, we were also able to see the Russian casualty report. Ole molle!
Oh, we got Bobcats again. We got 2 Bobcat skid steers today. I got to say, love to see it because we were pretty much averaging 0 there for a couple of days, but that's very, very nice. And tell us more.
Man, I get to tell you, Miss Decent, keeper of the records, kept the busing record. Troop losses take another dip, but the 7-day average is still in the 1,500 to 1,600 range, and all other categories are at or very near the 7-day averages. And so it is very nice to see and good to know. But nevertheless, moving on to the casualty reports, we were able to see that 1,380 Russians and Norks have been wiped out in the past 24 hours, along with 12 APCs, 86 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, 27 artillery pieces, 72 drones, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it was a very decent day, not bad at all, and it appears that the Russians were taking some fairly good losses out there on the lines, as we did get to see that 6 prisoners were taken in the Vovchansk area today. Look at that. 6 more prisoners for the prisoner exchange fund. And these guys are all holding up the shh sign, which some people like. Some people appreciate that sign. That's an emoji in GTA, by the way. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian forces getting hit in the area as well. And we're going to be muting that. But we can see the BTR-82 down there in the trees. And we can also see some soldiers over there in the side clip. And here they go, coming right on in. And hitting that BTR-82 dead on the nail. And we see them now going after another APC and slamming on dead into it. We can also see them hitting another one. And that's the end of the clip. But still a very impressive thing to see within the Vovchansk area. And so with that, we are now moving on from that and on into our next clip within the northern area of the Kharkiv Oblast, where we were able to see some drones getting taken out. And take a look at this. And we're going to be muting that, but we can see the drones being knocked out one after the other.
Boom. Jaga jaga, bliat.
Pretty impressive overall.
Super cam.
Oh, yeah, the super cam. One of the Russian drones is actually called a super cam.
Looks like they got some Mavics, some super cams, some Lancets.
What the hell is that down there? Oh, Romania.
Oh. Oh, man.
Oh, man, I'm telling you what. But moving on into our next clip, we also got to see one from Pischane in the Kharkiv region. Check it out. Oh, man. We can see the Russians getting slammed harder than my viewership. Oh, man. There goes another 100. Oh, man. And we see them hitting the Russians with some bomblets, some choice bomblets. Oh, hitting an artillery piece right there. And just absolutely obliterating them. I'm telling you.
Also, by the way, I see literally everybody in the chat tonight. They're saying, did you know that you could apply for the press pass for the White House? We did see that earlier today, by the way. I've seen like at least 50 or 60 people ask us about that tonight. And we'll probably cover that more near the question segment because we have seen that. And it looks like it's opened up to pretty much everybody at this point, as long as you have some sort of like social media following of some sort. So we might be doing that, maybe.
Hopefully so. That would be incredibly cool if we did. But we can see them continuing to hit Russian forces below, and of course some very impressive hits being conducted by the Nemesis unit. And that's the end of the clip, but pretty impressive to see overall. Moving on further down the line and to the area of Toretsk or Torske, we got to see the 63rd Brigade in operation. Check it out. All right, and we were about to get a copyright right there, so we're going to be muting that immediately now. No ambience, just raw music. And we see them driving through the few areas of the Sabotaje Forest that are navigable and getting the tank ready to conduct a direct fire support mission. We now see them lining up the tank's gun. Actually, it appears that it's an indirect fire support mission because they are firing several miles away from them. But we can now see the hits miles away. And also, I just got to ask someone, what does getting a White House press pass have to do with being a propaganda channel? I would just
Oh,
like
we
to...
wouldn't start covering politics. We'd just be trying to ask questions about Ukraine, about geopolitics. What better place than to hear it straight from the source? Instead of us having to like quote, one of the mainstream like news sources or something, we could literally say, well, "Here's our interview where we asked him this to prove that support will be going to Ukraine in the future," and literally have it on tape.
Yeah, I think that'd be incredibly cool. Like we can just, integrate it into what we're doing right now. There's nothing about being a propaganda channel for a certain political party or anything involved in that. And also if that was the case in which the press passes were being given out, I'm sure there's some sort of a ground that could be sued on at that point, because that would be a violation of freedom of expression and speech, that you have to say certain kinds of viewpoints or become a propaganda channel to maintain the press pass. So that would generally be a constitutional violation that would mostly be brought up to a federal court or a higher court like the Supreme Court. But moving on from that, we did get to see a Ukrainian tank firing at the Russians. Check it out. And this was at point blank range, mind you. And we see here the tank rolling on up to the Russian positions. And we now see them getting ready to lay down some heat. And boom, hitting them dead on the nail. And we see them slamming them right there.
So it's interesting. It's still snowing. It looks like quite heavily in Ukraine, actually. So I'm guess right in the smack dab middle of the winter months. So that would make sense.
Yeah, it is interesting, but the snowfall is kind of like how it is here in the South. It's just kind of splotchy. Like in some places get it, others don't, and it's actually pretty hard because back in the day, at the beginning of the war, it used to seem that the entirety of Ukraine got covered with snow at the same time, so it was very easy to figure out what dates a clip was from. Nowadays, it's become a little bit more difficult because the snowstorms this year were more sporadic and not really covering the whole country. So you had to I have to kind of figure out day by day if the snow is gone or not, and whether a clip came from one area or another because of it. So that's been a fairly interesting thing. But we can see the tank now rolling off with the Ukrainian flag overhead, once again triumphant, slamming another Russian position. And there it goes, riding off into the sunset. And that's quite a long montage of the thing driving off. But that's the end of the clip. Still nice to see. And moving on from that and down towards the area of Bakhmut, we got to see them hitting the Russians hard. We could see that right here. Check it out. And we're going to be muting the cyborg music or whatever that is. And we can see them now dropping a couple of bomblets into the tree lines to knock out the Russians. And it appears that they just hit an ammunition storage as well.
Jeez, like almost like it hit some fuel or something the way it went up. Oh, look, there it is.
Oh, yeah, look, there it is. And we see the Russians running.
Oh, damn, they're running like they might be a little bit warm.
Man, honestly, they're running like they shitted the pants. Let's look at them.
It's like a Charlie Chaplin routine. They ran out, then they ran back. Now they're running off.
Hey,
oh, look. Oh,
it must be
confused.
It must be that guy and his girlfriend that said why in the world I was talking so much at the beginning of the show. It must be him. Running around like a Charlie Chaplin film. Silent.
Damn.
Damn, son. But that's the end of the clip right there. Pretty nice to see. And moving on from that and further down the line, we were able to see near the Kurakove area, a Leopard 2 landed some hits. Check it out. We see here the Ukrainian
Like when they put the flags above the vehicles, makes it real simple. Ruski get hit, bliat. Look, he take direct hit to front glacis.
Man, absolutely incredible, man. And this Leopard 2 is laying down some action right here. Look at this. I mean, there's some impressive stuff. I mean, they're hitting dead-on shots. Here is why the Leopard 2 is the best in the world.
Well, and also, what was that? Do you see that thing like crawling in front of the tank? It was like on fire, and it was like a fireball. Like, go back there.
Oh, right there?
Look at it. Yeah, so it's like a fireball in front of the tank.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I think it's like the track assembly on fire. I don't know how that happened, but that's pretty wild. And we now see another Russian vehicle getting hit.
Man, the Ukrainians are hitting them so hard they got the metal burning.
Man, dude, the Russians, the U.S. knows the fireball as an alcoholic beverage. The Russians know the fireball as whatever the hell's going on under that tank.
The fireball that is not very enjoyable.
Dude, it was probably a vodka bottle that was on the front of the tank and it got hit and, like, the alcohol started burning all over the front of it. Like, honestly, that could be it.
Probably so.
But, I mean, they're just getting obliterated by this one Leopard 2. Impressive stuff. Incredible stuff, as a matter of fact. But moving on from that and behind the lines, we also get to see a grad firing on the Russians. Check this out. More rock music. You just can't play a clip these days without music being included. I remember back in the day when they used to not include music. It was a great time. A much simpler time. We could actually play the ambience of the clips to y'all, but now we can't. Absolutely sad. Stop music. I gotta tell you, it's a really terrible thing. You always gotta consider how the copyright board is going to listen to your stream, copyright board, because they might walk in and go, wow, that is the most dog-ass song that's ever been played, copyright strike, and then we're out of the business. We cannot do YouTube anymore. We would be destitute, and we would not have a job, which would be very sad. But moving on from that, now that clip, very nice to see the grad conducting a little fire mission. Meanwhile, unfortunately, we did see in Velika Novoselka today that the Russians actually did raise a flag in the middle of Velika Novoselka, and this was geolocated to the central area of the town, showing that the Russians largely control the majority of Velika Novoselka at this point. Also, if they were covered in any more red tape, they would be in the Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, for real, man. It looked like characters.
I mean, honestly, man, it looked like fake minifigures. But when you see them here waving the flags from the top of the building, that, of course, is mostly destroyed. And we can see here them zooming in, once again showing the Russian flag planted on top of the building. A little unfortunate, but nevertheless, it did take the Russians about a half year to make it from Uruzhane to Velika Novoselka, which is 4 miles away. So considering that that's the pace they're moving at in about 8 months or 6 months, I don't really think they're going to be making any kind of quick progress anytime soon. But moving on from that, it is now time for us to get on into the U.S. news, which is a small segment in its own right. We were able to hear that Denmark has put $2 billion into heightening the defenses around Greenland to ensure that the United States is satisfied with the security arrangements that have been made for the island and its strategic significance. Interestingly enough, Matthew's actually going to be releasing a documentary on that very soon, in about a week and a half, and it's incredibly good, well-researched, and actually wildly interesting. I've already seen the read-through of it, and it's incredibly good. I would say very impressive at that. We've also been able to see...
It should be out, by the way. I hate to say this, by the way. I think I'm going to push back the release of it. I think I had said, like, last time we were on the stream that it was going to come out, like, on Friday or Saturday. It's probably going to end up being Monday because it looks like my animations got pushed back a day or two. So I don't want to rush it and not put the animations in it because I think it would be, like, a disappointment because I've hyped it up so much. I can't, like, forgo the animation. So probably Monday, honestly, on our off day will probably be when it comes out. But I think y'all be impressed with it, I hope.
And I'd have to say it's going to be very impressive. I've already seen a good bit of it. It's just very, very good, top of the line stuff. Much like the first documentary that he made, and so I would highly recommend that y'all see it. It's going to be incredibly good when it comes out. And also another thing that is really interesting is that we did see an F-35 crash today near Fairbanks, Alaska. The only reason we want to show this is because it's very interesting, and also the pilot survived. So that's why we're showing it. But here's the clip. There's the F-35. Oh! Pancake.
I wonder what in the world caused that. It looked like it just literally just started falling straight out of the sky.
I really don't know what caused it because the landing gear was down on that F-35. When you look at it, see the landing gear? Like, it was right back, right there. You see the landing gear was down. So I don't know if it was taking off or landing and the pilot pulled a really hard turn. Maybe he took off from the airfield, did one of those full verticals, and then when he tried to pull out of it, it went into a flat spin and he ejected. Maybe that was the case. Maybe it was supposed to be some sort of a demonstration or something along those lines. But still, an unfortunate loss of the aircraft. We're assuming that there's one of two things. Well, we're assuming that it most likely was not a mechanical failure because we did hear that the jet engine was running perfectly fine and we don't see any smoke or visible flames coming from the aircraft. It may have been possible, and we're not saying this absolutely, that it may have been some form of pilot error and a wrongful usage of the aircraft that led to its loss. That may be the case, although there may be a technical issue that may be found with the F-35 that could be discovered by the NTSB or the Air Force's internal investigation into the incident. But still, a fairly interesting thing to see. What was more...
Also, was that the vertical takeoff like variant of the F-35 that can like hover?
From what we know, it wasn't, weirdly enough. It was actually the F-35A, because the Air Force exclusively operates the F-35A seen here.
Yeah, because I was about to say, I remember seeing, I think like 6 months ago, there was a video of an F-35 that actually crashed like literally right above the runway. It was doing the VTOL maneuver when it was taking off or landing. I can't remember. The pilot ejected like, I think 50 feet above the ground or something and somehow made it out, but the plane crashed. So I was wondering if maybe it was a problem with VTOL again, but I guess not.
Yeah, I don't think it was a problem with VTOL. I think that was a Marine Corps aircraft as well, if I'm remembering right. I might be remembering wrong. But that one had an issue with the front landing gear, I think, if I remember that one right. You know, that's when it tried to land, Matthew, and then it popped down onto its nose, and then he ejected out in panic. It started rolling off into the chain link. That was,
it was that one.
Yeah, it was that one. This one, I don't know what happened before this video was filmed. It must have been falling for a hot minute, man, because it did not look like that guy had just freshly ejected. I mean, his chute was already deployed well before the video looked like it was even filming. So I don't know what happened, but I guess you could say that this pilot, considering the Air Force investigation that's about to be launched, is not going to be living good.
Yeah, probably not. Oh, yeah, obviously you can account for it as well. Also, by the way, I see people asking, how much was it? I think that's about 84 million for that specific variant, so it's not cheap. But I guess the lucky part was the pilots made it out. That's the most important part because the plane can be replaced, but the pilots can't. So, unfortunately, quite a loss, but the pilots made it out.
But I'd have to be honest with you here, Matthew. I'm going to have to be entirely honest. I'm going to have to be frank with you. Can I be frank with you?
Franks?
Hi,
Frank?
I'm Frank.
Frank on the map?
but
I'm looking for the town.
You're looking for the town?
Yeah, I thought you were showing me a town, like, you know, you were making a joke like Frank or something like that.
Well, let me make sure. Let me line this up. Okay, hang on. I gotta go. Damn, where did it go? Hang on. Hold up. Wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. Okay, I'm going to have to do it with the other map. I was going to click on it, but it's not showing up on the main map. I guess you could say, Matthew, that the issue to this crash will be central to the matter.
Oh, yes, I see you know your central well.
Good one. And you, sir, would you like to receive my Cold Creek? How dare you, sir? Like, get your hands off my circle. But let's see. What is up with the names in this area of Alaska, man? Like, Wise Man, Coldfoot, Arctic Village.
Sounds
Caro.
very Native American.
This does not. It's like, dude, this sounds like some settler was traveling through and he's like, man, I got some damn cold foot. And then someone further up the road said, you know, that guy was kind of a wise man. And then they just founded the towns that way. You know, it's like, that almost seems like that happened. Because what is up with these names? Like, look at them. Hughes. What? Okay, these are...
Alta. What the hell? You scroll back up a little bit. There was something. Let's see.
Hogatsa.
Oh, that's interesting.
Man, that's like that. Man, I used to travel on the old Lackawanna. And it's like, man, that is one cool sounding name. I'm not going to lie. Like, I legitimately think that one's cool. There's a lot of cool ones, actually, in Pennsylvania. Because I've been looking into that railroad history stuff. You know what I mean? And, like, there's a whole bunch of cool ones. They had Lackawanna, Actually, I think that was like near to Michigan or something like that. They actually had some cool ones though in Pennsylvania. I was like, wow, that's incredibly cool because the railroads would be named after them. And I was like, that's just neat. By the way, this might blow you all away. The Reading Railroad was named after the town of Reading.
I believe that.
Man, it's real. Like it's like
That's
man,
believable.
man, I gotta tell you, man. But one town I've always liked a lot in Pennsylvania is Hershey, Pennsylvania, because this is where the Hershey's chocolate factory used to be. I don't think the actual Hershey's chocolate factory is here anymore. Oh wait a minute, I think this is it. But they also built this giant theme park around it as well. It was a legitimate company town though through I think most of its history. But you know, due to how modern laws work, that can't really happen anymore. So, kind of an interesting thing with that. Let's take a look at the streets of Hershey's. Oh wow, wow,
Not too bad, really. This looks like an average American neighborhood.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, by the way, you know something else that I found out, Matthew, that was really interesting? You know something interesting? Like, something really interesting? Like, wildly interesting? Man, let me show you this. The Monopoly board. Wait, hang on. We need to find the real one. Here we go. So, these are the railroads of Monopoly. The Reading Railroad, the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, and Short Line. Do you know one thing that was all in common with these four rail lines?
Let me guess, they're in Pennsylvania.
They all were in Pennsylvania. You actually got that down on the money. But another thing that was wildly interesting is that they had, in the earlier part of American history, when the Monopoly game was kind of being made, almost a uncontrolled monopoly on coal transport in the United States. So most of the coal that was being mined in the U.S. would go through one of these four railroads, and they leveraged that power heavily during that time. And that's actually what inspired the Monopoly game board to include these four railroads specifically because of their monopolistic control of the coal trade.
Oh, see, that's funny. That's when you know it's gotten bad when they put you on the Monopoly board. It's gotten rough.
Dude, nowadays it would be Walmart, Amazon, like it would be
Oh,
like
yeah.
those instead. Man, let's see.
BlackRock, State Street, all the rest.
Oh yeah, dude, you know it, man. And then let's see. Then somewhere on this board there would be what was that? There would be that Chinese AI, but once you roll your dice for the first time, you would hear "Screw you, Americans," and then it just disappear off the board. You'd be like, "Oh well, I guess that's gone." But still, man, honestly, we need to play some Monopoly, man. But also, y'all gotta be careful playing Monopoly because I have heard, and this is true, that Monopoly can ruin friendships and destroy families, and I've seen it happen. Like I've seen this happen in real life. So you gotta be
We've had
careful.
some feisty fights over Boardwalk and Park Place. Like those have almost caused divorces.
Man, I'm telling you, man. You know something that's even crazier, man, is that the interpretation of the rules, the jank interpretations that people try to put out to make the rules benefit them, it's just absolutely crazy. It quite truly is like running a monopoly nearly because it's like you cut people's throats to get the rules to benefit you, or at least interpret them to where they benefit you. It's kind of like that,
You know how to predict when a fight's about to break out while you're playing Monopoly. What's the one telltale sign that'll let you know it's about to happen?
when you land on an owned property with a building on it. Like
That's one. That's probably like the second most popular thing to cause a fight. But the number one thing is if you have to whip out the Monopoly instruction book that came in the box.
Oh, no.
A fight's about to erupt 5 minutes later. I promise you. 5-minute counter. Turn it on. Fight starts.
Man, the fights were brutal. Actually speaking, they weren't brutal in between Matthew and me. It's more so external forces that were brutal. But I remember that we tried to play Monopoly, I think, twice in our lives, and we had traumatic enough experiences with how other people play the game. We just never played it again. So Monopoly holds a special place in my heart because of the trauma that I remember from playing Monopoly just twice. That was enough for me to know I'm not really into Monopoly. But anyways, moving on from that picture of that F-35 I still had up, that is an interesting story for y'all to remember. But moving on down into the U.S. U.S.-Mexican border, there has been a fairly interesting occurrence yesterday. There was an actual firefight that occurred in between federal forces and those of the Mexican cartels. I did not get the exact location on the border, but we did get to see some armed cartel members operating directly along the banks of the Rio Grande and also appearing to walk across the Rio Grande into the United States. And here's some of those clips right here. This is from the Texas Department of Public Safety, which released drone footage of the suspected cartel members that opened fire earlier on U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents patrolling near the town of Fronton in Starr County. The suspects were tracked by the Texas Department of Public Safety drones as they attempted to cross the Rio Grande back into Mexico, but were stopped by the Mexican military, causing them to flee to a small island on the Rio Grande between the U.S. and Mexican borders. And so here's the footage of the armed cartel members after the firefight had began and ended. Crazily enough, no one was injured and killed on either side, and this guy also appears to be bored after getting into a firefight. We now see them pulling a backpack out, and we can see this guy clearly holding a rifle, and he can see the drone apparently because he looked right up at it, and later on in one of the clips, we will see that he actually tries to shoot down the drone, and it looks like he may be trying right there, with one arm, mind you, which is a bad idea. You can't really aim with one arm.
I guess this guy's dressed up like John Wick or something. He wants to feel like a badass, I guess.
Yeah. Man, I just saw someone say, man, I played Monopoly a lot as a kid, never had any kind of trouble. Well, I would just chalk that up to luck, I suppose, because their experiences with Monopoly were never good. Like, you know what I'm talking about, Matthew. Like, incredibly
Yes.
well.
Well, we'll save everybody the therapy session, though, on that.
Yeah, we will save you all that one, because that one's more of like personal business kind of stuff. But yeah, we never had a fun time. That's why we only played it twice. I mean, maybe it's fun with a different group of folks. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we were also able to see them once again on the small little island, because apparently they're untouchable on the island. Clearly someone controls it. It's either the Mexicans or the U.S., but for some reason no one wanted to touch them while they were on this island. Don't know why. We just see a couple of them running back. Basically, to summarize the situation with y'all right now that's going on the border, it appears that it's a return back to the 1910s with the Mexican, pretty much cartel leader at the time, Pancho Villa, and his gang of bandits and thieves, which would conduct cross-border raids into the United States. And back in the day, during that time, we actually sent the U.S. Army down to the Mexican border to deal with Pancho Villa and his gang of armed bandits. Also, what was that? Was that in the video?
What was it in the video?
It was!
A text message noise?
Dude, it was the text message. Dude, listen to that. That
Dude, I was grabbing from my phone and everything. I was like, I don't see a notification on my screen anywhere. A text came in. That's weird.
Dude, that legitimately made me look over at my phone. I was like, what's going on? I was like, that's not supposed to be happening during the show. But that's actually the audio. But what in the world was I even saying before that, man? I forgot, man.
I don't know. It like erased my whole my thoughts and everything.
Oh
Look
yeah, Pancho Villa.
That way, young man.
Pancho Villa and his gang of bandits. This guy's saying, "Go west, young man, go west." It's like, wow, it's like the 1880s again. But anyways, it looks as though we're going to be doing the same thing that we did to Pancho Villa and his gang of armed thieves back in the 1910s. We're going to be doing that to the cartel here soon, because it appears that the military is now being deployed to the border to deal with the gangs of armed bandits, thugs, and thieves that are currently pretty much running amok around the border zone at this point. That we're not talking about the domestic political situation, talking about that, by the way. This is talking about the literal armed gunman we're looking at on the screen that crossed over into the United States. We now see this guy once again aiming at the drone, and it appears that he may have tried to shoot it down, but he was, of course, unsuccessful.
That's crazy. Like, I know the cartel operates along the border. That's been known for quite some time. But the fact that they feel so comfortable to take shots at, like, U.S. surveillance drones and also now taking shots at Border Patrol agents across the border, that's just crazy. And I'd also heard that according to some intel the U.S. had received, the cartels, or at least some of them, had greenlit the cartel members taking shots at the Border Patrol from this point forward on a regular basis.
Sounds to me like the army needs to be down there.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like they're getting too comfortable because that's just crazy. It's wild to think that they're going to take that step of going that far to start taking shots into the United States, one of the most heavily armed countries on the planet, and they did it all because they were designated as a terrorist organization. So they must know that something was coming, and they're going to try to get the jump on the United States. But ultimately, though, the cartels are not going to be able to withstand the United States if we came down there.
You know, Matthew, I've actually heard a rumor that the U.S. government is considering practically giving out letters of marque to U.S. citizens near to the border area, so that way if they see a cartel member, considering that they were declared a terrorist organization recently, they can engage them on site. I've heard rumors of that. I haven't heard that that's actually happening or not, but that would be interesting if it did.
Yeah, I heard those rumors too. Honestly, on that one, I'm a little bit like mixed, a little bit on the fence on that because it's like some people maybe don't need to be doing that because they're not trained and things like that. Some people get a little bit out of control, like when they get sort of authority like that. But at the same time, though, honestly, to be straight up honest, if we're going to deal with it, we should do it officially through the military, not just have a free for all. To be straight up honest.
I'll be entirely honest. I don't think that's a great idea. But I would say this, however, if a citizen on the border felt threatened and ended up blasting a couple of them, I don't think that he should be charged with manslaughter or murder, because at that point it seems to me that it would be self-defense. Terrorists are in your backyard, quite literally at that point. They've been declared terrorists by the federal government. And so if they end up, feeling threatened by them and they blast them because, they saw them cross the border or something like that, of course that would be a case-by-case basis. I really couldn't blame them at that point because it's quite obvious that these people are armed and dangerous, especially considering that they're taking shots at U.S. federal agents of a federal department. That's a fairly concerning thing and really shows that they could take any measures to really do anything they want at this point and are not threatened by really anything for that matter. So that's what I would say. That would be my take on that, but still a fairly interesting situation that's happening down here on the U.S. southern border. It's come to the point that it actually is making it into our news segment, because generally while this is a domestic political matter, this is now moving into a matter of national security and also, for that matter, foreign policy, as it now appears that the cartel is a direct belligerent that the United States federal government will now be actively engaging in armed conflict with here in the future. With this in mind, many people are talking about the suspected cartel gunman that fired upon the border agents and whether this will spark a U.S. intervention against this gang of thieves, thugs, and bandits in Mexico. And it seems as though many people are believing that U.S. intervention will most likely happen near to the border regions as they try and deal with these gunmen and thieves. Others say that they will await the Mexican response, and some are saying that this will probably go nowhere and be a standalone incident. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so surprisingly, about 54% of the audience said yes, the U.S. will likely intervene in Mexico soon to stop the cartel from attacking border agents, while 25% said no, the U.S. will likely wait a Mexican response, and 13% said this will go nowhere. And considering the fact that there's already rumors flying around of these, what are they called again? What were they referred to? It was like the thing that was being rumored from the U.S. government letting citizens
the letter
take
of
care the matter.
marque?
Yeah, the letter of marque. If that's already being tossed around, then it sounds like the U.S. government is probably considering at least going down there and actually doing something to the cartel. Now, the question would be, how far are they going to go with that? Are they going to try to take shots at the cartel from across the U.S. border? Are they going to cross the border and go over there and get them? Or what exactly is the idea? I would suspect that the United States is probably trying to coordinate a joint U.S.-Mexican response to this, but it sounds like Mexico is not really willing to talk when it comes to joint operations like that, because they really sort of not cooperating with the United States right now, and it looks like that's probably not going to change. But ultimately, though, I think the U.S. will probably intervene in some way, somewhat the 56%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say, honestly, you hit that all dead on the nail. I think that we're looking at the U.S. military is most likely going to respond. But really the question is, how are we going to respond? It's practically inevitable at this point. It sounds as though it's obvious. But we do not know if they're going to be crossing the border or whether they're, like Matthew's saying, we're just going to take shots at them across the border. I'm having a feeling that we're probably going to deal with this a lot like we dealt with Pancho Villa back in the day, which will involve limited border incursions into Mexico, but only to chase down cartel members that were spotted on the U.S. side of the border. That's generally what happened back then. Also, a crazy side story. Let me go to that Pancho Villa. Because all of y'all are like, who the hell is Pancho Villa? Well, he is the most, how do I describe this? I'm going to have to just describe it the way I see it. He is probably the most like stereotypical like Mexican bandit you could imagine. This is a picture of Pancho Villa. Like this, like when people think of like what does a Mexican bandit look like? The sombrero, like this is a thin brim sombrero, by the way. But the bandoliers, I mean, this is literally what you would think of. But this is the guy where the stereotype came from. Kind of like Al Capone is the guy who came up with the Italian mafia mobster stereotype, where he's like, you know, I love my family dearly, you know, like that kind of a deal. This is a guy for pretty much like a bandit from Mexico. But nevertheless, this guy was the let me think. I can't think of the name right now. I'm drawing a lot of blanks tonight. But let's see here. He's pretty much the cartel leader of his day. We'll put it that way. I can't think of any cartel leaders' names. But nevertheless, he was the cartel...
You want a cartel leader name? Well,
yeah.
Actually, let me take that back. I'm not going to start naming cartel members. Let me take that back. We'll just move on from that, actually.
Let's see. But anyways, he is the first Mexican cartel leader, at least of significance, and he conducted a large amount of business, illegal and illicit business, by the way, here in the United States. So the U.S. decided back in the day that it would probably be a good thing for the United States to get involved in putting this guy down and conduct the Pancho Villa expedition. Which actually, as you can see here by the political cartoon of the time, the United States would send limited amounts of the army into Mexico to try and chase down Pancho Villa and his gang of bandits. They actually ended up getting a little successful, at least at some points. And let me see if I can get you all a picture of this. Oh yeah, here's the U.S. Army out in the desert in New Mexico, if y'all wanted to ever see a picture of that. But let's see. You know, Matthew, that kind of looks like nowadays, you know, with the Ospreys landing and dropping off army troops in New Mexico. This is literally the same thing.
It kind of does. Just the horses are a little bit out of place. But other than that, it looks pretty similar.
Man, I'm telling you, man, like, times never change. A motorized convoy. I forgot that we had those kind of trucks.
They're really, like, digging through, like, what is that, like sand or mud or what?
It's the ruts of the road. So many trucks had passed over it at that point. The ruts in the road had been dug down by like a foot at least. That's wild. But let's see here. I'm trying to see if I can find y'all the cool picture. The picture that you'll go, wow, that's cool. Are you kidding me? So basically, to summarize, a guy called John Patton, well, not John Patton. We'll just call him Patton. I can't think of his name. For some reason, I'm having a hard time remembering names and everything tonight because of another thing that happened before the stream. But nevertheless, Patton was down there with a Ford. He put a Maxim gun on it. He gunned down Pancho Villa's right-hand man. Basically, story short, since my brain is hardly firing tonight. But beyond that, very interested to see that we're pretty much going to be doing that again. I do believe the United States will most likely be intervening soon. Matthew got everything dead on the nail with that one. But moving on from that, it's now time for us to return to Ukraine and start covering the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Кілька головних речей за сьогодні. Доповідь головкома щодо фронту. Донеччина, Харківщина, операція на Курщині. Я провів ставку. Серед питань формування корпусів в Збройних силах України. Є конкретика щодо цього. Ми будемо і надалі зміцнювати нашу армію. Бойові бригади та правильний армійський досвід масштабуємо. На основі перших визначених бригад будуть можливі і інші системні кроки. Модернізація армійської системи не має альтернатив. Була доповідь міністра оборони України щодо комунікації з нашими партнерами. Я провів нараду із нашими дипломатами, командою Офісу і Міністерства закордонних справ. Ми плануємо міжнародну роботу на лютий, зустрічі та перемовини. Ключові завдання – єдність партнерів. Це основа усього. Також координація на європейському напрямку. Усім на континенті варто не забувати, якщо глобальні питання будуть вирішуватись без Європи, то це залишатиме Європу із такими рішеннями, які більшості європейців можуть точно не сподобатись. Це стосується, зокрема, і питань щодо війни та миру. Війни, яку розпочала Росія, і миру, до якого ми маємо примусити Росію. Всі разом. Маємо разом робити більше і для оборони, і для економічного зростання. Говорив сьогодні з прем'єр-міністром Ізраїлю. Висловив співчуття у зв'язку із Днем пам'яті жертв Голокосту. Важливо, щоб світ і надалі пам'ятав, що відбувалося та хто винен. Ми говорили з прем'єр-міністром Ізраїлю про міжнародну ситуацію, про наші контакти з партнерами, зокрема з Америкою. Я радий, що вдається повертати заручників, людей, які так довго були в полоні, і зараз нарешті вони повертаються додому. І ще одне. Сьогодні доручив урядовцям дати звіт щодо тих програм американської підтримки, які зараз призупинені. Це гуманітарні програми. Олексій Кулеба та інші урядовці з'ясують, які саме програми зараз в дефіциті. Майже всі вони йшли не через уряд України, а безпосередньо через наші громади, через різні організації. Багато проєктів. Визначимо, які з них критичні і потребують рішень вже зараз. Частину такого фінансування можемо забезпечити завдяки нашим державним фінансам. Частину обговоримо з європейцями та американцями. Це стосується багатьох сфер. Від зв'язку, цифровізації до підтримки ветеранів, шкіл, лікарень та відбудови. Звісно, деталі програм не були державною справою, але урядовці представлять мені все. І те, що є пріоритетним, те, що стосується українських дітей передусім, наших ветеранів, програм захисту нашої інфраструктури, пріоритетні речі ми обов'язково підтримуємо. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає Україні. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1070 of the war. And that is going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I got to thank all of you so much for being here so far tonight. About 10.6 thousand people have been here at the peak, and around 57,000 people have watched so far. We are, of course, entirely honored and appreciative to know that so many of y'all have been here with us tonight and enjoying the stream. And if you have, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we are always on this channel every single day, hell or high water, always covering this news and making sure to get you all the story of what's going on each and every day around the world. But with that, I do understand that we have a load of questions and a load of news. Well, not really news, just questions. Sorry, everyone. I've been heavily distracted tonight by something that happened before the stream that got me, I'll be honest with y'all, pretty angry. So hopefully that hasn't shown through too much on the stream tonight. And before people start saying dumb shit, no, it was not about anything with me and Matthew. It's a third party thing. Matthew and me get along incredibly well behind the scenes. But nevertheless, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving on to our final question segment of the night. We are moving on here, of course, to our no polls, actually, first. We're fresh out of polls, and we covered that issue with the cartels and the border. So with that, we are moving fresh on to our Super Chats and our final question segment. And our first one here, the last segment, is going to go to none other than, guess who? It is Gunfox yet again, who put in another day in history, and this time put in a $20 donation, as I nearly choked. But anyways, moving on. Gunfox said, October the 3rd, 1962, launched LC-14 Mercury Atlas 8, the MA-8, and it was the fifth United States crewed space mission, and astronaut Walter M. Schirra Jr. orbited the Earth 6 times. He said, question from the chat, and this was the second to last Mercury program.
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And very interesting to hear, once again, about the Mercury program. A very interesting step in U.S. space exploration and abilities. And just look at that symbol. Isn't that such a cool-looking symbol for the Mercury projects? Neat.
Honestly, it looks like that symbol for that singer that everybody's obsessed about. That well, I can't remember. What's the guy's name? He's the guy who does like the... He wears the purple. Y'all know who I'm talking about?
Prince.
This is an older singer. Yeah. That's it. It looks like that symbol, kind of.
Oh, man. Man. Dude, it might be. But that impressionist that we saw that one time, that was rough. Oh, man. Oh,
man.
Goodness.
We saw, by the way, for context, we saw one time as it was like near our old house. One time there was some type of impersonator that came there to impersonate Prince. And we just happened to go see it just for like the hell of it. Nothing else to do in that time. It was a while back. And the guy impersonated that Prince guy first, and he wasn't honestly that good, like not trying to bash the guy. But then he suddenly went to a van, and he came back out and was going, I was like, what the hell? He turned into Michael Jackson like 5 minutes later. It's like, interesting. So he's an impersonator of multiple different people, I guess. But he wasn't good at either one of them, actually. But it was kind of hilarious at the same time.
No, it was bad. Like, it was real bad, man. I was like, oh, this is rough. But beyond that, moving on from that and getting back to the rabbit hole that we have here about space exploration. It's a very interesting thing you talk about that second to last mission of the Mercury project. But still, I gotta say, what just a neat and impressive little space project that this was. I don't really know much about the Mercury program, but hopefully one day I will, with time. Also,
Hey, there's that ham, the little fellow that went up there into space.
hey, it's that guy. Did he
Yeah.
live?
Probably not. I don't think many of the animals live, but I may be wrong on that though.
I think Ham did live. Let's go see. Ham. He lived. He died in 1983 at 25 years old. Man, relatable. But beyond that, there's Ham.
Look at that ham. Honestly, man, like I always liked this thing right here. Like every time I saw it in the history books and stuff in school, and I saw it wearing like the helmet here with NASA on it, I felt bad that they were using him kind of like for kind of like a what's the word, like a test dummy, I guess you could say. But at the same time, it seemed like it was like content with its role here. It seemed like it was okay with it.
They would
Not that I had a
electrically
choice.
shock this thing if it pulled the wrong letter.
Well, I mean, the job had its downside. I mean, the benefits weren't fantastic. Also, didn't they pay him in bananas? Like they give him a banana or something like that for like a day's work.
Yeah, that was the reward if he pulled the right lever when he was being trained. He actually didn't get any rewards while he was in space, but if he got it wrong, they'd zap him.
Interesting. Well, I don't think the job was that great, honestly, but not that he had a choice in the matter, but he did what he had to do. He served.
Dude, my boy, the Ham here, he was in the pod, and he was like, I think I shall pull the red lever. And he pulls it, and then you just hear a scientist outside, taser, taser, and it's, it's like, dude, it's like, this guy had a rough job right here. But beyond that, these are the Mercury rockets. I'll be honest with y'all. My favorite one is the one on the far left over here. Don't know what the hell this one was. I think this was just a large Estes rocket they made for fun. I'm sure the Gunflex actually knows what that is. Unfortunately, I do not. I can tell you the specific variant of a railroad locomotive. Cannot tell you what this one was actually used for, unfortunately. But I always thought this one over here with the stainless steel looking color was the coolest looking to me. It looks like quintessential 1960s space exploration kind of stuff.
Yeah, I like the middle one, honestly, the Mercury Redstone one. Don't we have a model of that at the Redstone Arsenal, by the way? Because I recognize it.
We have all of these, I think, at the Redstone Arsenal. Let me go check, because we have a very nice collection at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center at Redstone Arsenal. Let us take a gander. Yes, the Saturn V, the icon and landmark of the Huntsville area. Yes, the shuttle, the fake one, that is, put on top of a fake booster and fake SLS. But
And it really looks faded like that in real life, too. The orange is not orange enough.
do you remember the last time we went up there and it was just like white, like all the paint faded off and it was just solid white? Like I was like, ugh. And then they have a full Saturn V, like a real one that has been laid out in all of its stages, separated inside of a massive hall. They also have one of the modules. Which one was this? Apollo 16, I think, command module. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Real module that went to space. That's the Saturn 1B. Pretty cool. But let's see if we. Oh, we got to do with a cat. Oh,
What's that for? Like, scroll down and look at what that is. What's that about? Like,
Let's
what's on
see.
the plaque?
Dedicated to the men and women of the United States Armed Forces and to their families for their sacrifice and selfless service to our nation. So it's literally just a monument to the soldiers. Pretty nice, though. Pretty nice. I respect that.
Yeah, I like it. It's just sort of like a weird placement for it. It's just right here at the Space Museum. But
Man.
I guess isn't the Space Museum has a Redstone Arsenal entrance to it too, doesn't it?
I think it may, but I think this thing is entirely focused for being like a NASA museum. So it's honestly, dude, this almost comes off as Soviet-esque, where you're like, "Yay, I love being in the Museum of Science and Culture," and then in the middle of it, let us have 5 minutes of silence for the great and heroic soldiers of the Soviet Union. It's like, it's like, man, it's kind of like that a little. I still respect it though.
I thought they were about to have on the plaque, like, these are the men that guarded the space shuttle when it was going to the launch pad or something like that. I was about to say, I didn't know they had, like, soldiers, like, involved with NASA like that. But, it's just, I guess it's just the armed forces thing. So that's pretty neat.
Also, by the way, Matthew, we have the lunar lander, and oh my god, it's a Mega Omega! Like, oh my god!
By the way, that's an Omega Speedmaster, I think. It's also known as the Moon Watch, which one of the astronauts actually took to the moon. I can't remember which one it was, but now it's famous. Now they charge $7,000 for that watch.
How much did
which is
Omega
outrageous.
pay? How much did they pay to have this put in this exhibit?
I don't know, man, but that's what the watch is always known for. They market the thing as the moon watch, and that's why they sell so many of them, even at $7,000, which is insane, by the way, for a watch. They still sell a ton because it's known as the moon watch.
Man, crazy to think that they market a watch on a whole lie. I'm just kidding, by the way. I'm just kidding. Like, don't get me. Don't grill me. And look at this. Look at this Chinook that is in very poor shape.
That is a tough one right there. It looks like it's been through a little bit of hell and back. Maybe Fallujah?
Maybe. Maybe. Also, they have the SR-71. Everyone has an SR-71 in Alabama. That's actually not special here. Like, I'd swear, I think we have like 4 or 5 SR-71s in the state. Like, we have one here in Birmingham. We have the prototype SR-71 here in Birmingham, which I think is one of a kind. And then we have this SR-71. I think there's one in Mobile, and then there's I think another one somewhere else. They're everywhere, though. Like, it's the most common thing for us in Alabama to see one of these at a museum. But anyways, what?
Oh. They've got what is this? A MLRS?
An M270. And I forgot what the designation of it is, but this is what came before the HIMARS. It has half the mobility, but twice the firepower.
Interesting. The Russians have one that looks just like this, don't they? This is like modeled after a TOS launcher, isn't it?
No. Actually, very different. The TOS is built on top of a tank, right here. Like, this is built on top of a T-72.
Oh.
This one is built onto a specialized chassis made specifically for the launcher.
Interesting. Yeah, it looks the little launching pod looks similar, so I thought it was maybe the same thing. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Man, it is wicked. Oh, look, dude, here's a modern picture of that thing. Yeah, there it is, solid white with no shuttle on top of it. That's how it looked the last time I saw it. Oh, a chaparral. Do you know what this is, Matthew?
It launches the missiles like that.
It was
I don't know, man. Tell me.
It was a point-based frontline air defense system that pretty much used modified air-to-air missiles, and it was called the MIM-72 Chaparral. These things were ridiculous looking in service. Let me go see if I can show one to you, because the way the crew would sit inside of this thing, it was just ridiculous. So that's what they actually looked like in service with the the detachable canopy on it. And it was like goofy. I thought this thing was stupid looking. And also, here they are. They're like, "Hey, Howard, am I supposed to be in this giant pod that's going to burn up the whole vehicle when I fire one of these missiles?" He's like, "Yeah, dingus." Like, he's like, "Get in there, man." But let me see if I can show y'all people riding around in this thing. Here's a Taiwanese one. They still use them in the present day. Let me see if I can get a picture of one of these somewhere. The MIM-72 images. There's got to be one of everyone riding in this thing. Like, they cannot, like, exclude this from y'all and hide it. It's got to be shown. It must be shown. Are you kidding me? Are they going to force me to go to War Thunder to find this thing? Because they would all sit side by side, and it was just ridiculous looking. Like, well, at least the one picture I saw of it where they actually did that. What? Are you kidding me? They're not going to show a picture of this. This is a shame, Matthew. This is a shame. They are depriving the entirety of the LSA from a good laugh. Oh my God. Wait, hang on. Let me see if I can get, like, another one of these pictures. Yeah. MIM-72 in War Thunder. Yeah, this ought to show it to you. Hopefully. There we go. So this is the best example I can give, but every one of the crew members just sat in this giant bench pretty much at the front of the vehicle, right next to the driver, and that's how they traveled around. Like, I cannot find you all a picture of that in actual practice, but that's quite literally how the crew moved around in the vehicle. It's ridiculous looking from the front, because you just see 4 people sitting side by side on like a giant park bench, driving around this thing with a giant missile turret on the back of it. It's a little bit bizarre.
It's honestly kind of nice, actually. I kind of like it.
Dude, honestly, man, this thing always throws me for a whirl every time I see it. Oh, look, it's our early surface-to-air missiles and a sub. We put the sub
That's
there.
the big yellow submarine. Look at that.
Dude, the Beatles are still in that thing. Help! Help! It's like, let me out.
That thing's actually, honestly, it looks large in the photo, but that trailer it's sitting on is kind of small looking, actually. I think it's like maybe smaller than I think.
That's relative to the missiles, man. This missile is like the story of a like the size of a 5-story building.
Then that trailer that's one big ass trailer.
That thing's ginormous.
It really is a trailer. It's out of proportion.
Also, they have one of the F-5s modified for NASA usage. But I'm trying to find y'all here the rocket that Matty was talking about, the Mercury rocket. And I be dipped. Where in the world did it go? Oh, wait a minute. Nope. Oh yeah, I forgot, Mandy. This is also the Army's Redstone Arsenal Museum because that's why they have that whole thing in the back with all the Army stuff, like this right
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
And
So
also, by the way, someone that actually was at the Russian Arsenal in the chat, they said that there is a direct entrance to the Arsenal from the Space Center right here. And also, that makes sense because I remember that we took the bus tour that one time, and they drove straight back from the Space Center, and they drove straight into the Arsenal. And there was like a gate back there behind the thing for it. So, yeah, there is a direct entrance. That's probably why they have that Armed Forces Memorial at the front.
probably so, but holy moly, Matthew, look, they got a V1 Doodlebug from Nazi Germany.
Oh, that's foreboding.
Man, some people say that this was a terror weapon of destruction and mayhem that the Nazi Germans employed later in World War II. Elon would call this his whip. But moving on from that, I'm just kidding. Don't beat me up. Someone's about to be like, hey, screw you, man. Like, hey, look, listen.
Hey,
Like,
I
no
love
matter,
Elon. Don't talk about Elon.
yeah, it's like no matter what you say in his defense or against him, he's never going to give you $1 million. So what's the point? Like, so what's the point of being really uptight about it? But anyways, let's see here. I'm just still. Oh, there we go. There it is, right there.
Oh, yeah, it sure is. They got that one. They've also got, wait a minute, where's the other one? Oh, there's the other one right there in the second picture, I think.
Man, absolutely amazing, man. Absolutely incredible.
Man, every time we used to drive by these things, you see the little wires holding them up and holding them steady.
Uh-huh.
It makes you think of those inflatable like bouncy houses things that they actually like hold up with wires just like that, and it makes it look like these are inflatable rockets or something. And they're holding them down.
Dude, it does. It
Yeah,
does,
it really
man.
does,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Dude, I always thought they were inflated. Oh, dude. Hold up. A gamma goat.
A what?
A gamma goat. Do you know what a gamma goat is?
No, I've never seen this thing in my life.
Dude, the gamma goat is so cool. It was specifically made for airborne troops. And here's one in service right here. So this thing is the little motorized unit at the front, and then it had an articulated trailer mounted to the back. And so, like, it's the weirdest thing. I don't really know how to explain it beyond that. It's just really like an articulated transport vehicle, but it's called the Gamma Goat. And
Wait, look at those dudes right there, like sleeping in the front of the car, though. That dude right there is freaking like dead on the left.
dude, he legitimately is dead. But
He's just sleeping, by the way, for disclaimer. He's sleeping. That's just a joke.
oh yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
we
want
got
somebody to come in here and report that and be like, oh, they're showing something. No, that guy was actually sleeping. He was alive.
Also, typical problems chart. What was the most loose wheel bearings? That doesn't sound like something you'd want on a moving vehicle. And also, gearbox low on oil. Most of the problems had to deal with those two things.
Man, honestly, the one thing it had the least amount of problems with was the hinge being broken, which is the least serious malfunction you can have. The most serious thing and the most common was literally the wheels falling off.
Man, these things are designed to rigorous Army standards. Well, what standards are those? Well, it's where the wheels don't fall off, like something like that. It's like,
You can just imagine this thing going full speed and then a wheel just like rolling off the side of it and then it starts skidding along the ground all the way to the
dude, and
battlefield.
this thing could kick it. It could get up to 56 miles per hour. So, like, for this kind of a vehicle, this thing could kick it,
Man, that's like a death trap. A wheel bearing or something fell on that. That thing's going down.
Also, Matthew, look, they got a special box on the side of this thing for Hot Dog Man. It says clickbait daily.
Oh, what does that actually say clickbait daily?
No, it says something like something bat daily, but it looks like clickbait kind of.
Yeah, it really does. Hey, man, this is the Hot Dog Man. This is what Hot Dog Man probably used to drive in the military when he was driving those trucks and couldn't shift into second gear. This was the thing. The number one issue when Hot Dog Man was driving this was he used to grind the clutch up 24/7.
No, I'm about to show you what he drove because they wouldn't even honor him with driving that. They'd honor him with driving the mule.
Oh man, this is worse than a half track. This is like a half-ass.
Dude, this thing was actually pretty cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this thing was used by airborne forces in the field. They would mount these things with recoilless rifles. Like, it was like these things were actually some of the main transport vehicles of the airborne forces during, I think it was the 60s, the 70s, and on into like the very early 80s. They used these things a lot. They weigh a quarter of a ton, so they're about 500 pounds. And the steering column is like it's on a swivel. So when it's not being used, you can actually swivel this thing out of the way and you can pack a load of these things into an airplane and just paradrop them out the back. So they would immediately have little mobile transports to use once they hit the ground. And they were very lightweight and easy to use.
Yeah, it looks like a garden like buggy or something like that they put some like advanced wheels on. Also, that seat looked real nice on that thing. Did you see the cushions on that seat?
Luscious.
Look at that.
Like,
That
luscious,
thing is
man.
like freaking upholstered. That is plush.
Dude, this thing is actually pretty nice. Like, I actually love these things. Like, not to disrespect the mule. I think they're really neat. But the prices of these things these days are egregious. Like, how much do you think, Matthew, one of these things goes for when they come up for sale?
In the modern day, or what they used to go for?
What they go for now? Like, it's kind of like a collectible.
Hell, it could be anything. These days, collectors are crazy when it comes to paying for this stuff. Probably like 60,000 or something.
Oh, well, that's not that high. It's like 20 to 30 grand for one of these things.
Oh, that's still crazy, man.
Yeah,
this thing weighs as much as a motorcycle, but they're charging like what, 2 or 3 times the cost.
Yeah, and it's a pull start too, which is like the even weirder thing about it. It runs like a lawnmower. Like you sit in front, and it's right over here somewhere, but it's literally like a pull cord, like on a lawnmower, and you pull it, and you get the choke right on the thing, and then you finally hear, and then you can sit up here, and the gear shifter is all over there. You can see the clutch and the gear shifter right there. It's just exposed, and then you put your feet in this basket, and there's the gas pedals and the clutch and the brake.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, actually. It's just like literally like a go-kart with the way those like throttle wires are hooked up and everything like that. It makes it really simple to repair though, like I guess, but it shouldn't be like $30,000 to pay for it.
You know what? You know what? Speaking of this museum, and speaking of Gunfox 61's super chat, do y'all want to see a mule running? Like, I can get y'all a YouTube video of a mule running, and it's actually pretty cool. Like, they sound pretty interesting. So let me see. M274 mule. Ah, yes, the mule. Let me go see if I can show y'all this thing running. Oh, here we go. Yeah. It's the first video I found. Let me skip forward to where he runs it. Yeah, here we go. So this is a video of someone who brought one to kind of like a car show, but here it is.
On Popular Mechanics back in '56, the prototype, and they basically gave Willys a box and said, "Make an engine that fits in here. That's air cooled," and that's what they did.
Look at that.
Dude, isn't that kind of cool though? I mean, like,
Man,
you know.
It's honestly like literally straight up, it's like a garden buggy. You load it up with stuff, and it's just got a nice little like Harbor Freight engine on the back. They got a little driver's seat.
Also,
I like it actually. It's pretty cool.
Dude, this thing is legitimately cool. Like, I just think these things are just the neatest. Like, when I found these things, because I was looking at like airborne history, and also like I was looking at airborne history because they added some airborne units to a game I played called withdraww. I found these things in the game, and I was like, whoa. I was like, these things. See, there's the pull start. Did you see it right there, Matthew?
Let's see it
Watch,
again.
It's literally a pull start like a
Oh.
lawnmower.
I got to give them design points on that. They have the pull start literally like integrated into the frame. That's kind of neat.
Dude, this thing is just the coolest thing. Like, I just think it's so neat. I wish I could get one of these. And crazily enough, you can kind of use these things like a go-kart. Well, you can. Like, I don't think that's crazy. You know, it literally looks like a go-kart nearly. But I just think this thing is the neatest thing ever. I love them to pieces. But that's...
I could build you one for like 1/4 of the cost. You go to Harbor Freight, get one of those little Predator motors. You go get a little metal frame with some wheels on it, put it on the back, put a chain on it, and you got a go-kart already.
Dude, wait, hang on, man. Let me go get... Let's see. Garden wagons. Here we go. Just get this one right here. Like, this one. Put a motor on it.
Yeah, put the Harbor Freight motor on the back. All you have to do is cut, or like, I don't know, like get a blowtorch or something like that and cut a little bit of that mesh out. Put the chain down, put the sprocket back there. You got a thing ready to go. It's only got 1 gear, but you can go.
Dude, wait a minute. Do you remember this one? Hold up, Matthew. It's time to go down memory lane here. I just saw it, and now it's... Do you remember this one?
Oh man, this was the death trap. We used to go down a hill in this thing, by the way. Like we had like some type of hill that was like at the backyard, like when we lived back in the sticks. And you could literally go to the top of the hill with this thing. You could get in it. You'd have to like literally lean the control rod back so you could try to steer the thing. And we'd go
Just
all the way
like
down
that.
the hill. Like, man, it was like 20. I think we were going like 20 miles an hour. It was fast. I remember one time it almost flipped, or actually I think one of us did flip out of the thing, and that ended the whole fun permanently for that. But
I think
that
it was
fun,
me.
though.
I think it was
Yeah, I think
me.
it was you, man. It flipped and like threw you out.
But remember, man, I've flipped and got thrown out. Remember that? By the way, y'all, we were like really really little when we were doing this. I would say like close to like 10 or somewhere around there. But like it was so fun. It was like driving a car, like because and also that steering column was cool because you'd have to sit there and literally just like hold it with both hands and kind of move it to the right and the left to steer it down the hill, and that thing would pick up some speed. But I got thrown out. Like, you just flipped sideways and I went sliding out across the grass. And then one time, Matthew, this was so funny. I remember this. You were riding down and you were like impressed that you were getting up to that kind of a speed, and you looked over and you started waving to me, and you were like smiling and waving, and then you went bam right into the sidewall of the house with the thing. Remember that? Dude.
Yeah, I do remember that. Because I think we didn't think that far, because if you took it too far up the hill, you pick up way too much damn speed,
Yeah.
and you'd literally come straight down. Like, you'd go like literally like, I don't know, thousands of feet, and then you'd realize, I don't think I'm stopping fast enough. And of course, like bam, like whiplash right into the side of the house.
Man, you got like whiplash. Like, I remember it, dude. Like, your head went like almost down into like your stomach and then came back up. And like, it was crazy. I still remember that to this day, because I remember Matthew's smile was as big as it could be because he was proud that it was getting up to that speed. And he looked at me and he was holding the steering column with his right hand, waving with his left hand, looking off to the left of the wagon at me. And then all of a sudden you just hear bam, and like sparks come flying over that little part down there, and his head goes whipping forward. Didn't hit anything, luckily. He didn't hit like this, like the column or anything like that. And then it, like, the back of the car like flipped up a little bit and then went back down to the ground. It was so funny. Like, it was the funniest thing ever. But that was actually, dude, honestly, man, I think that's like some of the funnest memories I remember from being in the sticks. Was that little cart thing. Because beyond that, we just dug those ditches and filled them with water. Remember that?
Yeah, I think that ended my career for the wagon. Those after I smashed the wall and got whiplash, I think that ended the whole career for that. But there are some advantages to living out in the sticks. Like, for example, if you want a dirt bike or something like that, you can always go out there and do that. We didn't have that because there wasn't any room like to do anything like that. And also, I don't think it was allowed either, even though it was the sticks. There were still some rules in the sticks. But the cart was fun. I like the cart. Also, this cart is only $149.99. You can get one yourself.
Man, honestly, I don't know if that's good or bad for carts, but
That's good for a metal cart, actually. It was not bad.
yeah, that doesn't sound that bad. It literally is the one that we had because it has those little pull pins and everything where you can put down the sides. Like, that's the exact style and everything. But ours was red, and also it was really rusted by the time that we were using it. It was not green like this one. But still, oh, look, there it is with all the sides down.
Oh, yeah, too. I remember that. Also, I think at one point I actually tried to, I don't even know why I did this. This was like young and really, really stupid. I think I actually lowered the gates on the thing, like you see right there in the picture, and I tried to ride it down the hill.
When you
with the
couldn't
gates
steer
lowered.
it. Yeah, I remember that. You couldn't steer it.
I remember I did that once. That's not when I got jacked up. It was actually, I got jacked up when I raised the bars and stuff like that and got too far up the hill. But this thing right here, I don't even know why I did that, man. That was really stupid looking back. I could have gotten flung out of that thing and run over by the cart.
Oh, man. Dude, oh my goodness. Dude, I'm remembering all of the stuff that we did with that cart now. Like, like we remember that there was like two paths that we could take, Matthew, because on that hill, it was at an angle on the side of our house. So, you could go follow the length of the wall one way, or you could turn left and go the long ways, kind of like behind the house. The long ways, if you took a left turn, was like more flat and you'd slow down quicker. You'd still go a good ways, like several hundred feet, but you would eventually slow down. The other way, dude, remember, it was like the steep incline down to the main road, which was like way away from the hill. And so if you took that one, you were just like rocketing, dude. It was like 20 miles an hour all the way down. And like you would never stop because the incline never slowed down. So you just had to find a way to like eventually take like a dangerous turn, almost tipping the thing over onto the concrete to eventually slow the thing down. But I remember, dude, we did that one, the one where we just went straight, did not turn left. The whole way down, like a couple of times, dude, that was terrifying, man. I remember that because the car would be going so fast, it would be like bucking around and stuff a little bit. But dude, oh
And
my,
I don't think those wheels and that axle was meant to go that fast either. Like, I had a feeling like it was gonna like jump off at any second, but it didn't. Also, by the way, like, just on a side note, Amazon's selling the same metal cart for like $45 compared to like the other place. Like,
Yo.
I think there might have been an overprice on the other one, maybe, or either this is a Bing Shaling cart, one or the other.
let's see,
Not that I'm price comparing on the carts. Oh no, this must be a Bing Shaling cart. They're all about 150 except for this one.
Yeah, dude, that one's the one where you get in it and you start riding it down the hill and the wheels come off of it like a gamma goat. It's like, oh no, dude, terrifying, man, terrifying, honestly. But anyways, I hope that y'all enjoyed that little trip down memory lane. Also, someone said your poor mother. Oh no, our mother was sponsoring these ventures, at least at the start, for something to do for fun, because there wasn't really a lot to do for fun out there. Like at all. So like there was two kind of things that we would do as kids. We would either ride that damn buggy and nearly kill ourselves, or we would get a shovel out and we would dig these ditches. And these ditches would get long. Like they weren't big, but they would be about like I think a foot wide, about a foot deep, and they would go on for about 30 feet. And when you're like 8 to 10 years old, that's pretty deep. You'd whip out a garden hose, put it at one end, fill it with water, and then you would play around like you had just built a river for a small little town, and you would like float toy boats down it and stuff. Like that was another thing that we did. Beyond that, man, I can't really think of anything else that we did. I think it was just like those two things: dig ditches and ride that cart.
Yeah, I'd have to rack my brain for the rest of it, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, like I think that was literally everything. So when computers came around, that was a pretty revolutionary thing, because I didn't ever even get on a computer until I was about 12 or so. So when computers came around, it was really revolutionary because you didn't have to go outside and dig the same ditch for the umpteenth million time or ride the cart. Well, you know, the cart had ended by that point, so it was literally just dig ditches to find something to do. So when computers came around, it was incredibly cool. The first game I ever played, if y'all want to know, it was actually Napoleon Total War, which seems really weird for a 12-year-old to play, but I honestly think that that's the reason why I'm really big into history, is because the first game I played was historically based, and I wanted to know who the hell this Napoleon person was that I kept playing as in the game. So then I figured out who he was and read all the stories and stuff. And so, like, my first historical fascination that I remember growing up was in the Napoleonic era, and specifically the British Army. Like that was like the big thing for me as a kid. And then I played Empire Total War after that, and crazily enough, Empire Total War came out before Napoleon Total War, but I played Empire Total War after I played Napoleon. And so then I played as the United States, and then I got interested in the United States. But I was huge into Britain growing up because, like, you know, of Napoleon Total War. So I was just huge into British stuff, British history, British culture. And then finally, years down the road, long after that whole fad ended, I found out that we are like 90% British, and like only 10% Scandinavian. So I was like, hey, look at that. I was like, cool. I kind of know a little bit about our culture and history of where our family comes from. But beyond that, that's like a little bit of the background lore of the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, and also kind of where the whole historical obsession came from. I really think it was Napoleon Total War. But anyways, with that,
Also, outside of the like farmyard fun in the sticks, occasionally I would go inside and actually make electronics, which is a hell of a like contrast to riding in the backyard on a wheelbarrow or something like that. I would actually go inside and like build these like little electronics models with Arduino parts and things like that. Because at the time I was really fascinated with like coding and figuring that kind of stuff out. I never really like properly learned the coding language, but I did learn how to like code in the Arduino native language. I can't remember what it's called. But it was pretty neat. I actually got like some stuff on the internet. You might be able to still find it out there today. It's on Instructables for some projects I actually made. I actually like got an editor's award on one of them or something. And that was crazy because I don't know how to code or anything anymore on that front. I still know how to do websites and that coding with HTML, but not like actual coding on Arduino. And for some reason, when I was like 13 or 14 years old, I could pull that off, but not now. It's weird.
you know something, man? You know something that just hit me? Like, speaking of something that you made, let me see if I can go find this. Let me see. Oh, dang, man. I hope that it's out here somewhere, because I ended up making it into a semifinal for a model company. You remember that, Matthew? It was
Oh
like,
yeah, you're talking about that model you did for like Tamiya or something like that.
yeah, it was the Tamiya model tank, and I made the model, and I'm trying to see where is it, because it should be out there on the internet somewhere, because it was actually like submitted onto their website. And they were like, "Wow, isn't that cool?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's cool because it's mine." And it, like, I was really proud of it. And let me see if I can find it. I cannot. Let's see. Tamiya semifinal. Let me type that in, because I'm sure many of them hadn't made it into semifinals, because not a lot of people did the M41 Bulldog, because, you know, it was kind of simple. But let me see here. I cannot find this thing. But it didn't make it onto their website, like in like 2015 or 2016 or something, in the middle of the summer. But I will show you all the model. It's just that I can't find mine specifically or a picture of it. But this was the model that I made. I actually got into model making for a bit. Still kind of am, but I never really had the time to sit down and do any of that, and also, do all the painting, which the painting is really, it takes a lot of time, and I've never really had time like that, most times. But beyond that, this was the little model that I built. It was this one. It was an M41A1 Walker Bulldog, which was a light tank for the U.S. Army from 1955 to 1967, replaced by the M51 Sheridan towards the latter end of its life. But nevertheless, this was the tank that I built, and I submitted it into a Tamiya model competition way back in the day, and I actually made it into the semifinals, and the picture made it onto the website. I was really, really blown away with that, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then I forgot about it, and I do not know where the model is right now. I have no clue. So it's still interesting. I was looking, man. I'm getting quiet here because I'm like, can I find the picture? I don't think I will be able to. I don't think it's out here on the open internet like that. I think I'd have to go to their website and go searching through all the months of pictures that they had. But beyond that, another thing that I built, this was a pretty cool thing, is a model, and it's a model of the Notre Dame, and it's a paper model, just like this one. It actually is this one. I built that. It took like 20-something hours to build this thing, but I sat down and I just knocked it out in 2 days. I spent all day, every day doing it. Really cool stuff. But while Matthew was building Arduinos, I was like making models and building stuff like this. Pretty cool stuff. I know where this is, but I don't have it with me right now. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least as much as we can. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat here goes to yet another channel legend. This time it is the Duncan VR with the animal noises yet again. And yes, he has them. He puts in a $26 donation, and thank you very much, Duncan, once again for that support. He said, Baba, moo quack meow. And since you showed me the monkey in space, Maddie needs to show me some monkey sounds. Oink, oink. There you go. I'll accept that as the sounds. But he said, please don't put Putin on my screen. My PC broke down. Baba, inshallah. Marmot retired. No, he's still out. He's still active. Old man the fly. Old man, Baba, Mal.
Aw, man, the fly is still out there and he's trying to bait a response. Aw, man, I need to guilt trip my viewers for a desk and a chair and a trip to DC. Aw, man.
Also, by the way, it just happens to be that he tries to bait people in responses near the end of the month when rent's coming due. Oh man, he must need some extra views for cash. Oh man,
I really need some sympathy points. By the way, I have a super chat goal of 15 super chats. Let's hit it. Gets 2 super chats over 10 hours. It's like rip. It's a rip. But beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and throwing in those typical animal noises. It's typical because it's what the Lee Spring Army expects. It's tradition. It's custom at this point. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And I got to thank you massively for that, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to be here every single day in and day out, 6 days a week, covering this news like we always have. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to another channel legend. It is BC Skyman, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, BC, as well, for that support. And he did not leave a comment on this one. But BC, I will tell you, I saw your YouTube video that you put out of your vacation to, I think it was the Dominican Republic. That was a very nice-looking beach down there, I must say. Like, that video made me want to go down to the beach, honestly. I'm jealous of where you got to go. It's very nice down there, but it looked like you had a good time. So thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you for the support as well, BC Scammon. And do you know, Matthew, that the Dominican Republic actually is on the same island as Haiti?
I'll be honest with you, I actually didn't know that. Like, there's Port-au-Prince. Is that Haiti?
This is Haiti. And on the other side of the island is the Dominican Republic.
Now, I will say, BC, that was a very beautiful beach. But honestly, I would not be anywhere near Haiti, to be straight up honest. That seems interesting.
No, no, no. It's fine in the Dominican Republic because the Dominican Republic raised an army with the exclusive purpose of stopping anyone from Haiti from invading the Dominican Republic or crossing the border. So you don't have to worry about meatball or whatever the hell his name is coming across the border and like eating it for dinner. Yeah, barbecue. There we go. Dude, if he was named Meatball, he's gonna be coming over. Hey, I'm eating here. Like he's eating your wife or something like that. But beyond that,
whoa.
no, but beyond that, well, that sounded wrong. Now that I think about that, wait a minute, I don't think that was right. But beyond that, we're just gonna pretend like that was okay. I didn't even think about that until I said it. I didn't even think about it, but it was absolutely true. But anyways,
whoa, Jack, whoa, watch your phrasing.
Because Matthew, Haiti and the Dominican Republic are on an island called La Española, and both of them share parts of the island. Haiti, interesting enough, is deforested. Look at this lifeless land. Without trees, without vegetation, no topsoil. Meanwhile, the Dominican Republic, luscious, forest-like, covered. You can actually see the difference from space.
Yeah, that is a big difference right there. It's just Haiti's a hellhole. Like honestly, like those gangs in Haiti have just ruined that country completely. But it's just wild. Like I think Barbecue still runs the place. Actually, I think he's actually still in charge.
Man, Barbecue running the joint. Let's take a look down here in Port-au-Prince. Oh.
What the hell? I've never seen a street view that looks like that.
Man, even the street views in Port-au-Prince are poor. Like, it's like, let's take another look. Whoa.
Oh, my goodness. What the hell? What the hell is this?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's like a mixture between like a junkyard and satanic at the same time. I'm not sure what to make of this.
Welcome to Skullface, side skull shot. Pluribus unum. E pluribus unum? They didn't even space the E out. Like, they didn't even space it out. You read it as a pluribus unum, not e pluribus unum. You know what I mean? But anyways, it is a Musi Biart. Man, I like to see that. Musi Biart. You know what I mean? And then, let's see here. And then it's just oil drums. Gotta love the oil drums. Barrel per day.
Stuff right here. I ain't liking it.
And then you come in here, it's like the damn House of Horrors up in here. Look at this. This stuff scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, if they drop this kind of junk right here, because I think I understand what this is now. If they drop this kind of junk, they might find that they would have a little bit of a better time here in Haiti. But you know, this type of stuff. Also, there's a dude lurking at the back there. He's not sketchy at all. What's he doing on the phone or something? I actually don't zoom in. I don't know what he's doing.
He's on the phone.
Okay, maybe he is on the phone. He's just waiting around here. But yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting.
Yar, that be some fine Peruvian blue. It's Captain Blackbeard. But let's see here. Oh, look, it's a self-portrait of Hot Dog Man.
Man, this is honestly like sick as hell. I've had enough for this.
Man, honestly, this place gives bad vibes. No wonder the place looks like hell. But anyways, moving on from that, I guess you could say that there was they ain't no Benjamins up in Haiti. They got a town named Benjamin, but there's no money in Haiti. But moving on from that, also, man, look, it's the hometown of LaCroix.
It's interesting. I guess I get flavored water here. I see you know your flavored water well, LaCroix.
And also, Matthew, look, they got the inconspicuously named Camp Cock. Look at that.
Coke.
I know. I think that's pronounced the other way, Matthew. I'm afraid you're mistaken.
I think it's Coke, man. I think it's Coke.
Well, no matter what, I don't think Barbecue wants to eat any of this. like I'll be honest with you. But moving on, moving on from that, we cannot have a rogue terrier up in our building. So they're gonna have to get out. Jesus, you know what I mean? They better lay down a whole barrage of that Dirac. But nevertheless, we're going to move on over into the Dominican Republic.
Also, Monster Life said, Matt scared, LOL. Honestly, I'm not going to lie, that kind of junk, like, messes me up. Like, I can't deal with that kind of junk. When you see, like, sort of, like, evil, like, shit like that, honestly, popping up, and, like, I've had enough. Like, I don't mess with that.
I don't like that hoodoo voodoo business. I'll make that clear. That's kind of why I got a thing against New Orleans, because you go down there and they're really into that hoodoo voodoo junk. I think it's I honestly think it's really distasteful. But anyways, moving on from that, some people are like, what do you mean it's distasteful? Look, that's my opinion. If you don't agree with it, that's your business. But that's what I got to say about it, all right? I just don't like that stuff. doesn't vibe with me well. Like, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, quite literally. But nevertheless, the Dominican Republic is a beautiful place. Much different than the neighbor right next door in Haiti. And actually, interesting enough, man, the Dominican Republic has one of the highest GDP per capita in the Americas outside the United States and Mexico.
Oh, I guess that's why they have that mansion right there in that picturesque little harbor right here. It looks pretty nice, actually. This watercolor, though, is just freaking crazy. Like, that's much nicer looking than Florida water.
I know, it's just insane. Honestly, man, the entire Caribbean's like this. It's just really, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. I'd say the only place that I've seen so far that gives the Caribbean, or really the Gulf, a run for its money is the Adriatic, which is the only other sea I've seen that really does impress me a great deal. I don't know, maybe the northern Mediterranean's really nice because, you know, the French Riviera has a name for a reason. But you know what? Let's look at that. Does it look good or not? Because I've never really looked at the French Riviera. I don't know about you, but I've never just taken a gander.
Does it look good or no? Honestly, it looks kind of good, actually. It looks kind of all right. I mean, I like the architecture. I think it's pretty nice. The cleanliness might be a question.
A French LHD. That's something interesting to see. I didn't expect that. But let's see. Oh, dude, actually, that does look really nice. Look at that water.
That water. There's some people in the water. Look at that. Kind of fascinating.
Like, can we? Oh, wow, look at that.
Look at that water. Oh, yeah. This honestly looks like water where a shark might be lurking.
Man, I don't think there's any sharks hardly in the Mediterranean. I know there's none in the Adriatic from what they said when we looked at that a while ago. But this is...
Is that like a wives' tale, or is that true? Is there really not sharks there?
Let's check. Also, there's that French LHD again. Dude, that's actually sick that there's a French naval yard in this town. But anyways, in this city, I mean. But are there sharks in the... Look, they already know that we were going to ask that. Let's see. Is our home to around 50 species of sharks, including hammerheads, great whites, and blacktip sharks.
Man, that water's infested, man. That water's not absent of sharks. That thing's like freaking got a whole like herd of them in there.
Let's see. Is the Mediterranean... let's see. I gotta type in this whole thing. Hang on, folks. Let me make sure that I can type it. Is the Mediterranean dangerous? Answer. Nearly 2,500 people died or went missing as they attempted to cross the stretch. Well, that's probably why. But let's see here. Shark attacks. Mediterranean shark attacks. We won't... Let's see. Shark attacks. Is it a high number? Is it not? Since 1900, 50 attacks have been recorded, 11 of which have resulted in death.
Wait, scroll back up to the top for a second. Let's see. They are rare, but do occur. Huh, so that's weird. So they got like a whole bunch of different species of deadly shark, but they're not mad though. So I don't know what makes the sharks around Florida get upset.
It's the meth.
Man, those Florida sharks, I tell you what. Oh, this carp.
Well, look at this, man. In 2023, 16 shark attacks in Florida.
Yeah, that's actually quite a lot compared to the other places.
Yeah,
it's actually safer to go into the Mediterranean, even though they got a lot of sharks.
Dude, and then I think one of the safest places in the world was the Adriatic. I think if I remember correctly, it's like there was like no shark attacks that happened in the Adriatic. So when you go out here to the Mediterranean, you know, and you see a shark swimming by, you're like, "You're not gonna eat me, are you?" And they're like, honestly, you know, I'm kind of off the clock. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's fine. Like, you know, everyone thinks I'm going to eat you, but I'm not. And then you go to Florida. Yay, time to go swim. Come here, boy. And then, like, flings you around and kills you or something like that. It's
those
like
commie sharks, man. Those commie sharks showing up around Florida and stuff like that. Also, by the way, show the Gulf of Mexico right there. Google is about to officially change that to Gulf of America, by the way. Like on Monday, actually.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they've announced that they're officially changing it, so that will only be Gulf of Mexico for a few more days.
I'm calling it the Gulf of Mexico for the rest of my life, man. It's like I'm like Fort Benning is it's not Fort Liberty to me. It's still Fort Benning. This is still going to be the Gulf of Mexico. I grew up calling it that. It's been called that forever. It's like I'm not changing that.
Well, honestly, like my thing is if Google's naming it Gulf of America, I'm just going to run with it at that point. It's like everybody's jumping on board. I thought maybe for a minute people were going to refuse to call it that, but it looks like Britain's the only country protesting it, which they're way over there on the other part of the world. So, you know, I guess I'm just going to call it the Gulf of America at this point. I'm going to have to cave.
I mean, dude, I'm still going to call it the Gulf of Mexico, man, because, you know, they call Mount McKinley Denali. I don't even know. Like, it's like I've always heard Mount McKinley when I was a little kid. You know, I was like, I'm not changing that. I'm not changing that. You know, it's
I think
just
it's going back to Mount McKinley again.
so why in the world are we changing that to back to what we originally know it as? But then we're going to change the Gulf of Mexico to something entirely new. You know, I'm not getting it,
Well, I mean, you know,
man.
I don't know really.
I,
I was about to say something, but I think I was about to get political, so I won't say it.
Man, I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you what. And also, some people are going to go, "No, it's Mexico because Mexico will rise from the ashes." No, that's a stupid take right there. Like, I don't mean to be rude about that, but that is a goofy take because it's called the Gulf of Mexico because Mexico was the first country that had most of its coastline within this Gulf. The United States didn't even exist. It was 100 years ahead of the United States declaring independence when that was done. And so, with this in mind, it makes sense that it's called the Gulf of Mexico, not the Gulf of America. Renaming it the Gulf of America just doesn't really make that much sense to me because historically, that you usually name the place after either what the people called it there that were there before, or you call it after the first people who were there. Like for example, Houston is named after Sam Houston, who was the first president of the Republic of Texas. You would not rename that city because it was named after the first president of the state of Texas, and the town was built during that time. No reason to rename that later. With the Gulf of Mexico, it just doesn't make that much sense because because Mexico was the first thing there, so they got to name it largely. Well, Spain got to name it, but still beyond that, that's another side point. It's the Gulf of Mexico for that reason. And it's been that way for 300 or so years. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to change it to me. But
I say just compromise, and since America and Mexico want to call it their Gulf, just call it the Gulf as a middle of the road compromise.
you know what? I have a better idea. What if we call it the Gulf of Tex-Mex? It's like Mexican food, but Texan.
Yeah, we could call it that, or we could just call it we could call it the Gulf of China because China's moving into Mexico, they're moving into Cuba. I think China's the real winner here.
Also, like, here's kind of my issue with it. Gulf of America, to me, that doesn't really roll off the tongue. You know what I mean? Like, the Gulf of Mexico, like, that has, like, a little bit of, like, a jingle kind of a sound to it. Gulf of America, you have to take, like, this pause at of before you say America to say it. Like, I think if it was renamed the American Gulf, or something like that, that would make more sense because the American Gulf rolls off the tongue easier. But just literally going from the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, it doesn't really have the same kind of like easy sort of a way of saying it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess it would be worse if they called it Gulf of United States. Although that would probably look more regal or like more clean, I guess you could say, like imposing. But at the same time, though, honestly, I could really care what it's called. But if we're going to call it something and Google's naming it Gulf of America, I guess we'll have to call it that. Otherwise, I'm going to be tripping up talking about, oh, it's the Gulf of, what was it? What they used to call it back in my day? Come on, Jack, Mexico.
Like, I think, let's see, the Gulf of America, the Gulf of Americas, the Gulf of the Americas, the Americas Gulf. I don't know. I just feel like the name change. I don't really like changing the names of things. Really, like if I hear that it was called something, it's going to be that forever. I kind of do that with all of y'all too. Like Butchie the Crouton used to be Butchie 777. In my head, I still think Butchie 777. I still say Butchie 777. Once I get introduced to one thing, once something has a name for me, it just never changes. It will always be that name. So that's why I can't really get behind the whole renaming thing because it's I'm gonna always call it the Gulf of Mexico. That's what I knew it as, so I'm always gonna know it like that.
We'll just call it at this point, since everybody's getting into a big brawl between the countries, between civilians, and everybody's getting in a fight about what to call it. Just call it the Gulf of Petty at this point. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Man, honestly, I think it would be better to make it more historical, though. Like, maybe the Gulf of Amerigo, like Americo Vespucci, who is the guy that the Americas are named after. It's like, maybe that would be better. Because Gulf of America just sounds way too modern. Like, I just have issues with this. It just sounds way too modern. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds like a modern creation. It's like, I feel like it should be founded with some sort of historical significance. I'm not against it if it sounded good or better. Like if it was like the American Gulf, that doesn't sound that bad. That sounds fairly similar to Persian Gulf. But if it was the Gulf of Amerigo, That would make a lot of sense because that's the guy who mapped was the first cartographer of the Americas, and that's why it's named after him, because he was the first guy to do it. So, like, I would get that if we did it that way. But the way it's just being done right now, it just sounds too modern and kind of like a corporate renaming. And I'm just generally against, like, corporate kind of sounding stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm honestly surprised that our governor in Alabama hadn't showed up talking about, I want to name it the Gulf of Alabama. I'm like, where's our governor at? I thought, don't we have a little bit of a Mobile area down here? We can lay claim to it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
what if the states started fighting for it? You know what? Wouldn't that be some crazy crap? Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas start fighting over it, and also Mississippi. You can't forget them as well. Start fighting over. They're going to call it their own Gulf. That would be a little bit crazy.
Man, honestly, that would be wild, man, if that actually happened.
I wouldn't put it past them.
Like, let's see. Sorry, Gulf of Petty. Someone laughed at that. Let's see. Something historical. I suggest the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, but you know, like if there has to be a renaming done, that's what I'm saying here, Melanie. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, it has to be renamed. Like, if it has to be renamed, if that's what the government is pushing for, why not make it classy sounding? You know what I mean? Like the Gulf of America just sounds corporate. Like it sounds like something you would hear in an office. Like, you know, it's like, we want to make sure to embolden our employees with a well-diversified array of things to do. And so for this reason, we are allowing them to go to the break room in the Gulf of America. It sounds so corporate. Like the name of it sounds corporate. Like the American Gulf, that sounds like a classier way of putting it. The Gulf of America, that's pretty neat. A historical reference to the guy that the Americas are named after. You know, covers pretty much both continents. Kind of cool. But then when you put it like that, it's like this is just like that just is a lame renaming attempt. You know, I
say, Governor, we should call it the Gulf of Piss Off.
I say we are called the George Washington Channel.
The British are coming back for a second go. They didn't get America, but they're going to get the Gulf of Piss Off.
Man, they're going to get the. Oh, wait, I can't say that. Like I was about to say, like a British curse word. I was about to be like, whoa. But also, thank you, Ron, for loving.
Wanka.
Thank you, Ron, for loving the corporate voice. There are people in this country that have what I call a corporate personality, and it's literally just like it's like, how do I make my personality as whitewashed as possible to be as marketable to the corporate entities, which I'll be working for the rest of my life? Like, there's a lot of people in this country like that. A lot of them work in management at your local grocery stores. I promise you that. And like, you will hear it. You will hear it when you hear it, and you'll be like, there it is. And you'll be like, they all talk the same, and I never get it. Like, I never get why they talk
gluten
like.
Free? Is that dairy? Is that fresh?
Bobby, look, I'm an American.
Do
you have anything dairy free? Like, there's something like that. It's like, but
is it whole grain?
Oh, I cannot stand the corporate stuff, though, Matthew. Can you? Like, I cannot stand it.
No, I can't stand the corporate stuff, man. And also, whenever you get most modern jobs these days, they force you to watch these series of corporate training videos, which are like hell on earth. At least you get paid to watch them. But at the same time, though, I would rather just like do the normal job than watch those painful videos. And also, like, for example, I can't remember. Like, I think Publix had them. Hell, everywhere I've ever worked has had those. It's just terrible, man. I can't stand corporate stuff.
Dude, I was actually looking at, speaking of corporations and, you know, corporate kind of stuff, I was looking at some Louisville and Nashville like employee handbook things last night for no reason at all, you know, just because that's what I do. But one thing that was interesting, dude, is on the front of every handbook, like, this is how the corporate speak was back then. It was literally like normal speak now. They're like, remember, when you pick up the phone or talk to a customer or do anything, you're not representing yourself, you're representing the whole company. So you act like if you don't act right, you're going to be running them off to our competitors, and we're not going to have a company, and you're not going to have a job. And at the bottom, it was literally signed by the president of the Louisville and Nashville Railway. I was like, dude, that's honestly like the kind of talk I can get behind. It's like, because that's just, it's not like trying to make it all like, you know, hitting the word super or anything. It's just literally straight up. It's like, don't be an ass. You're going to run them off from our company, and we're all going to lose our jobs. Signed the president. I was like, this is what I can get behind.
Oh, they said they hired me for a cashier. They said that they hired me for a cashier, and then they said I'm representing their company. Oh, what, they think they hired an attorney or something? No, I'm not representing nothing.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh man, I started working into the cashier. They told me I had the whole company on my back. Oh man, well that must be one fat company right there. Oh man, because I'm feeling the weight of it. Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh man, and I really get no respect around here. Oh man, they told me to get off the cashier and go clean the bathrooms. Oh man, what do I look like, a janitor? Oh man, I'm telling you, well I must look like a janitor because I get no respect around here. Oh man, I'm telling you.
But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. Specifically because I just saw Matthew say we got 20 more and we got like 20 minutes until we're running overtime. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to S. Storm, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, S. Storm, for that support. And they said the future looks interesting and hopefully makes for a freer world in the next decade, and hope can be contagious, and we hope. Oh yes, we hope that things go well. But I also hope that people like Putin sort of start going by the wayside, because otherwise we could be sort of in a situation where we need a lot more hope. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree, and I'd hope that there'd be some hope for hoping, because there's not a lot to be hoping for right now, and rather than being a patriot of the United States and hoping for brighter days. And so with that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And you know, Matthew, I just heard the greatest idea for renaming the Gulf. Rename it the Gulf of Pigs.
The Gulf of Pigs. Oh man,
It is a sequel to the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah, if JFK was still alive, that would be a doozy.
I want that name sent back to Jordan Marsh. You know, something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, dare named it that.
well, sir, this was a mess up. Well, obviously, this was just an F up. You know, something like that. You know, he'd be going off, man. He'd be going crazy. Crazy, man. But anyways, with that, thank you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Xman, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Tom, as well, for that support. He said, show us how the Panamax locks in the Panama Canal recycle the water and how Lake Guton gets its water.
Lake Gaton. I don't know how that's pronounced. You might have actually pronounced it better than me. But this is where it recycles the water in these pools. And so they have pumps. They pump the water in, and then they pump the water out. They still lose some water with every single transit, but it's not as much as the original Panama locks, which are over here, which are the Panamax locks, lose, because those are literally just straight lost systems. There's no recycling of the water over here, because that wasn't really a concern back in the day, back when we originally built the canal. But due to climate change, we are now having to consider the conservation of water being a serious ordeal. So that's why the Super Panamax locks have the water pools to be able to pretty much gather their water from. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And also, by the way, just for y'all to know, the Gatun Lake and Lake Alajuela are both artificially made by dams that were constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers. Here's one of them. And then Lake Alajuela has its dam right here, which is the John Madden Dam, named after the guy who made Madden. But I'm just kidding. It's not. Like I just got to put that out there before someone quotes that. That is not true. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best we can. Quite simply, I hope it was good. And with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a 10. They said, I hope this buys a whole grus, Michelle, for Enforcer Matt. What is that? What is that? Let me pull that up.
That's that banana.
Let's see. Oh, it is a banana. And let me go back to it. Honestly, like that won't even buy one Grus Michelle, because those things were expensive as hell. Like, those bananas make you go broke. But they said, I hope this buys one, and please take a question from the chat. And also, Nightmare Before Christmas, I actually abandoned that altogether. Like, I went and looked after the stream was over, because I was going to make a Patreon video about it, reviewing the sugarcane and also that banana.
Wait a minute. I found it cheap. It's $2 a pound on this website. And I'd be damned we're going to get...
I ain't trusting it, man. I ain't trusting it. How come it's so cheap?
It's from Hawaii.
Yeah, but Hawaii stuff's expensive as hell usually.
Let's see here. Let's see.
But like I was saying, though, I actually gave up the sugarcane idea and also the banana idea because everything was so expensive. It just wouldn't make sense. I'd be spending like $100 for like some bananas and some sugarcane, which would be crazy. But I had to give it up, sadly. Well, I was going to make a video about it, but sadly, no. But maybe the Enforcer found them cheaper, but I don't know about it. It's pretty cheap. It's unusually cheap.
These are grown in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. So these are good because they are subject to U.S. agricultural regulations. So
Hey,
these would be fine.
Walter A. Lakota is down there in Hawaii, I think. Walter, can you tell us, are these good to go? Are these like the real deal?
So let's see here. Fresh picks, produce, fruits. What else do they have here? Grapefruit, grapefruit, gold orange, orange in bulk. They have pineapples. They have sugarcane for
Sugarcane.
$6.49.
Hey, 649.
Dude,
Click
these.
on that for a second.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I think these people just actually price it properly. You know what I mean? Like, it's insane to say that one banana is $40. You know?
The shipping must be insane. Like that must be where they get you or something like that because these prices are insanely low. Also, by the way, I noticed at the top it says something about the egg shortage. Wow, man, they're limiting people to 1 dozen per order. Hawaii must be getting hit extra hard by the egg shortage. Also, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but the eggs in the store are like outrageous because of that bird like flu running around, going around the chickens. It is crazy. Like we're having a bad problem with the egg supply in the country.
I gotta tell you, the chickens are dropping like flies. I walked into a chicken poultry place and I said, whoa, look at that chicken. That thing is dying and sick and shriveled up, just like Hot Dog Man and his sick group of people, absolutely falling to the wayside. Terrible stuff. But the eggs, they're really tough. We've been looking into some replacements. We've been looking at Cadbury. I stole that joke. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. But Matthew, I think we found a substitute to find. And actually, Walter A. Lakota knows of that place. He just said it right there, Matthew. I think that is a legitimate place.
Interesting. Well, if the shipping's not crazy, then we can maybe pull that off. Actually, I probably wouldn't break the bank on that one.
Well, considering Matthew, it is a U.S. state. While it is an island in the middle of nowhere, I'm thinking the shipping can't be that much. Actually, it's probably going to be insanely high because they'd have to fly it all the way in. Yeah, you know, it's probably going to be a lot. But we'll see.
I'm thinking like $50 or something.
Dude, dude, my mind is going to explode. If it's like $50 for like if it costs that much, we may as well just get like 6 pounds of them, you know, and just eat bananas for a week. Like, you know, like at that point. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here, let's see here. Walter said that the enforcer, the eggs here in Hawaii are the same as before. Interesting. Here in the domestic states, they've gone up in price like significantly. So that's because of that flu thing. But if you're generally getting them at the same cost, that's unusual. That's actually very unusual because usually, oh, I'll take that back. The stuff in Hawaii is already overpriced to begin with because all the goods have to be flown in. And some of the goods I think come from Hawaii, but most of it I think gets flown in. Excuse me. Am I correct on that, Enforcer?
I think most of it is flown in. At least like perishables like fruits, they have to be flown. But I think everything else gets shipped in. But food products generally are flown.
Yeah, generally speaking, it seems like it's expensive as hell to live on Hawaii, like all the way around for everything, because of a shortage, and also it's small. You got to fly it in and everything like that. So I don't know. Like maybe the egg prices were already so high that they couldn't raise them anymore.
Man, I wonder. Like, you know,
There's a gold plantation right there in the middle of it. Look at that.
You know something that's interesting, Matthew, that just never hit me? You know, whenever there's like a product shortage in the United States, you know, not saying that I'm behind this, but this is a hypothetical here for everyone to think about. The prices rise because everyone hears that there's a shortage, and then the demand artificially rises because they're hearing that there's a limited supply. What if the U.S. Congress just came in and started rationing regimes on goods that were having shortages, like eggs, like Hawaii's doing, where you can only get 1 carton per person until the shortage ends? Like, you know, that might be a little bit too much of a government overstep right there, maybe. But
Yeah.
that still is
And
an
then
interesting
also,
idea to at least make sure that people can have eggs and they're affordable. It's just that you can't have all the eggs you want because there's not enough of them.
yeah, and also the shortages don't happen often enough to like institute a government response to it. Really, it just happens every once in a while, and generally they get sorted out on their own, like the private sector does. So they usually don't have to do that. But yeah, this one seems serious, like with the chickens. Like it seems like the flu's gotten out of hand with the birds.
Yeah, it sounds bad. But still, also Laser said World War II. The rationing regime was across everything though back then. It was literally all encompassing in the economy. But the U.S. actually was heralded for that because apparently we did it apparently better than everyone, like at least from what they say. The British actually kept their rationing going until 1957, I think. That was when the last things went off the rationing schedule, because the supply lines weren't even fixed until then, entirely at least. In some categories, it was lifted pretty quickly. But I think butter was one of the last things that stopped being rationed in Britain, and that was in like the mid-50s. But anyways, with that, I would love to rabbit hole more and more on rationing, but that's still an interesting idea. And also, someone said that would start riots. The modern world is finicky these days. Like, you could start rationing everything back in World War II, and people just accepted that that was the reality, and that's what we had to do. Nowadays, because the birds are dropping dead and they're not making enough eggs, if you try and ration it now, you're probably right. Folks would go most likely into riots, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Because if the government said, look, there's just not enough eggs, and we want to make sure that they're still affordable for folks, so we're going to ration the amount that folks can get, I'd be like, I get it. Like, I would be like, that's a fairly understandable kind of an action. I understand it. Like, I wouldn't be rioting in the streets over eggs, or making it sound like Big Egg is controlling the government or something, because someone's going to say that out there somewhere. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Turbo Divergent, who puts in a 10 and says, don't we have to intervene with ourselves instead of after, let's see here. So on this one actually could be political, so I don't think I'm going to be able to read this one off. But just to make it clear, if you're referring to Ukraine aid, Ukraine military aid is still flowing all the way. The only thing that's been temporarily halted is the humanitarian aid, and that's only a temporary halt. Ukraine's already working on getting that lifted by making a report, and I suspect that it'll probably be reinstated here probably within like a month or so, because it sounds like they're just going through reporting requirements, and it sounds like it's probably going to be reinstated, at least in my speculation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with what Matthew said on that, and I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Danny B. It's Danny B who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Danny, for that support. He said, good evening, Enforcers, and Chef Danny here, and I just want to let y'all know that the catering went well and a few bumps, but overall, it was good, and wanted to thank y'all and the LSA for y'all's support. And Danny, I'm glad to hear that went well. I was hoping that was going to go well, but since that was your very first big gig with the catering, and I'm glad to hear it did go well. So I'm very glad to hear. And also, Danny did mention something about the eggs being expensive, so he did confirm that. But thank you very much, Danny, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. I'm happy to hear that catering operation went well, and I hope that you are having a great time after that catering event, because I bet that thing was exhausting. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Russia Nussi, who puts in a 5 and says, hello, Malaysia again. Tour guide and driver told me today that they want America to take over the canal because their government is corrupt, money disappear, and jobs go to government family.
And also, is he talking about Malaysia in a canal, or is he talking about Panama in a canal? Because I think I may have misunderstood something there.
I think they're in Malaysia, but they're talking about the Panama Canal.
Oh, yeah, well, the thing with Panama, I wish I could read you all the script, and I'm kind of wanting to save a lot of those details for the video, but I'll say a little bit of it. China has invested an insanely large amount of money into Panama recently, especially into critical infrastructure projects, which are usually a way that China creates debt slaves out of the countries that they do those projects for, where they pretty much have to do whatever China wants, otherwise the Chinese can start bringing down the hammer on them in their domestic economy. So China controls both major ports, the one in Panama City and the one in Cologne. Those are the only two major ports in the entirety of the country. China directly owns both of them through a Hong Kong company called I believe it's C. Hutchison. They also control a decent amount of the infrastructure built in the canals. They actually helped out with building the Super Panamax canals. So they actually invested in the new canals, the Super Panamax ones. So they have a little bit of direct economic control over the canal. They also have built several bridges. There are currently, I believe, 5 major bridges, and out of all 5 of them, 4 of them have been built by the Chinese and have heavy Chinese investments in them from C. Hutchison and other companies as well. So the Chinese control most of the critical infrastructure throughout Panama at this point, and that gives them, considering that that was done largely by a investment into the Panama government, they control the Panamanian government considerably through their economic control. So with this in mind, it's becoming incredibly concerning because they could be violating our most recent treaty, which I've forgotten the name of the moment, but was signed in 1977, where the Panama Canal must maintain its neutrality because they're clearly starting to move in a more pro-Chinese direction. So that is kind of what's going on right now with the canal, and when you look at it, that's somewhat concerning that they have that much control over the Panamanians. And not only that, the 60% of all container traffic in the United States travels through the Panama Canal. So that is a fairly concerning thing. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Kachulian, for that support. And they said, do you think it's possible that the president's threat is real because the DoD thinks war is imminent, so he's not scared going all in? Is it possible?
It's possible, but a little unlikely for the most part, at least talking about North Korea. In other situations, it may be pretty considerably likely. But with that, I thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, here, I'm not really sure what this is all about, but if anybody ever has information that you get from somebody or you hear like on the street and you need to report information that you think could be vital to like national security or also public safety, generally my advice is to contact the FBI. You can find their numbers on the internet, or you can contact them. I believe there's a contact form on their website. But generally that's what you'll do if there's information you have. I can't be the one to relay it. If you have information, you'll have to go directly to them, because I see someone in the chat who says that they have information about something. So if you do, I encourage you to contact them and let them know. But with that, we are now moving on to our next super chat here, and this one goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a 5 as well. And thank you very much, Kachulian, for that support. They said, when you remember that North Korea still has floppy disks, modern phones and drones must feel like they walked into Star Trek. And if they could, watch it, XD.
And I bet you they would watch it if they could, but honestly, the North Koreans are so far behind the times. Most of them haven't even seen modern technology like a floppy disk or a phone, because most of those people are coming from rural Korea, although this specific unit is from Pyongyang, so they might know a little bit of that tech, but not really familiarized with it too much. But yeah, they pretty much have walked out of the 1930s into the modern day, and they're getting beat badly because of that. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Philip Fixes LSA, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Philip, as well for that support. He said, please explain to the uninitiated how Scooby-Doo is Soviet propaganda, and it's my favorite rabbit hole from back in the day in Slav LSA.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that one. That was a long time ago on that one. This is memory lane here.
Oh, yeah, Scooby-Doo and those young pioneers. Yeah, those commies, damn communists. Okay, so let's go over it really quickly here for everyone who might be new. Let's go over it again, just for the new folks. So Freddy is dressed up like a young pioneer, a consulate from the Soviet youth programs. They drive around in a hippie van, which, once again, it's a very communal kind of a truck, or a van more so, meant for multiple people, not for the individual. Velma here is dressed up in some sort of a way that's supposed to seduce the capitalist into believing that socialist ideology may be acceptable. Daphne's there to close it on in and make sure that you really get all in on the communist ordeal, and then Shaggy and Scooby share their snacks together forever, and also he's some sort of a pothead. Altogether, these people are communists. This is the atypical sort of a communist right here. And if you ever see anyone traveling around on your nation's roadways that look to be these people, make sure to call your local CIA or FBI branch directly and let them know that American operatives in support of Soviet forces are inside of our country and attempting to overmine our valuable institutions in this democratic form of a system. They are nevertheless...
Do you know some extra information about Shaggy that I don't think you were aware of?
What's that?
That Shaggy was like representing the bourgeoisie.
Shaggy is representing the proletariat. I'm just kidding.
No, he's the means of production.
Man, he is the means of production. I tell you what. But I'll tell you one thing, man. Freddy is a real member of the proletariat. I mean, he's wearing the consulate's uniform perfectly. Like, let me go pull up a young pioneer for all of y'all. Soviet young pioneer. Y'all will see it. Y'all will see it when I show it to you.
And also, they always refer to the group here as gang. He always called them a gang.
See? Freddy, white shirt, red red ascot for the young pioneers, blue jeans, white shirt, orangish ascot, whatever the hell it's called. Ashcot, whatever the hell it is. But it's the same thing. He's a damn young pioneer, and these are his communist followers of his group. That dog right there is deceptive, because that thing sounds like it's stupid, but nevertheless, I've heard it give out some speeches. I heard it go, "Ruh-roh, Raggy, we must overthrow the bourgeoisie and bring forward like the means of production, ruh-roh," or something like that. I heard it. I'm telling you what, and y'all gotta be looking out for these things right here. You gotta be looking out for them. But
You know, oh, I just realized, you know, it's wearing a collar and it says SD on it. It's literally socialist dog.
my God, like it did call in the SWAT team. We got a damn commie in here. Like, also, man, look at this little red book. Chairman Mao, much?
Yeah, you know what they're looking at over the book? That Chairman Mao just showed up to show them what's all about.
You know, they're sitting here right here, Matthew. They're looking at Stalin's gulags. See how happy they are? They're filled with
man, this
joy.
is like the hostage picture right here.
Man, they had no hostages. I can promise you that. I mean, look at this right here.
Oh my God! Hey, they got the policeman right there. Look, he looks like he could be from the commie days.
What the hell's up with this guy's uniform? Like, what is up with his uniform, man? Like, he doesn't even have a gun. He's just there.
Man, the Scooby Gang was out here catching people from a bad time that used to exist in the South.
Man, I'm telling you what. I mean, maybe we could get behind this one, but it's like beyond that, they are still commies.
That's as in putting him away, as in locking him up.
Yeah, like we could get behind them getting this guy. Context is probably needed there. Thank you, Matthew.
Context is needed.
But still, the NKVDs, like it's like there's some, it's a also. I don't know what they're looking at most. Why in the world does he look like he just took like serious drugs? Like it's not a normal face.
Well, Shaggy was always stoned, so I mean, you know.
I don't know what's going on, but nevertheless, they're communists. Like, that's just basically the gist. You can see it right there. Freddy is a commie, without a doubt. But moving on from that, and out of those pictures and that rabbit hole, I hope you enjoyed the rabbit hole. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Cachulian343. Also, someone just caught onto the jokes there, so I see it in the chat. But Cachulian put in that 5 and said, "Isn't landing troops on foreign soil without consent an invasion? And I agree the cartels need to be dealt with, but I'm concerned about disrespecting Mexico." And honestly, Cachulian, I think that the United States are probably trying to have talks with Mexico to do a joint U.S. and also Mexican military operation to take those cartels out near the border. But I think that the Mexican government's not going to work with them on that. So if the U.S. decides to go across the border, that would be an interesting situation. I'm not really sure what Mexico could do about it, but that would be a little bit of a tricky one. But Enforcer, what say you?
As far as it's concerned, much like it was back in the day with Pancho Villa, our national security concerns with armed cartel members crossing the border really take precedent over offending the nation of Mexico. Because if the nation of Mexico really didn't want us to take these actions, they would deal with these armed gunmen and bandits which are being harbored inside of their own borders at the moment. I get where it's coming from on a diplomatic level, and I really do think that we should be a little bit careful considering that Mexico is one of our largest trading partners. But at the same time, however, this is an issue that's beginning to affect citizens along the U.S. border and could start to jeopardize their safety. And that's become very evident, especially over yesterday. So with this in mind, I believe that it would be prudent and a necessary measure to take whatever actions necessary at this point to be able to deal with these armed bandits and ensure that U.S. citizens along the border regions are still safe from these people and their illegal and illicit activities, whatever they may be. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well, but you do have good points there, and I think that we should make sure to take care and pay good attention to the diplomatic situation and try and manage it as best as possible, but also maintain the safety of our citizens. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here also goes to Cachulian343, who also puts in another 5. And they said, also, any updates on the Syrian IG? And I'm still wondering if they're going to be a democracy or an emirate, and preferably a democracy separate from the religions.
I haven't really heard a lot, to be honest. That's why we haven't reported on it much. They kind of went into a black hole, and I don't know what's going on in the interim government at this point. But it doesn't seem that any of the actions we're seeing are showing that they're moving towards the Russian and Iranian side. They just kicked the Russians out and made a big deal about it as well. So I'm thinking that they're still moving towards the Western side. It's just a really quiet and slow kind of a development at this point. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that has addressed that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to also Tony M said, "Did I hear someone say found oil in Mexico? Oh, oil. They can have avocados, they can have all the valuable stuff they want, but if oil shows up in Mexico, oh boy, that could be the eagle flying in on that one." But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Mason Wolfie, who puts in a 5 and says, "Have you seen or have you guys seen the purity seals that the Russians and Ukrainians have been wearing?"
Yeah, they're like the Warhammer 40K purity seals. I have seen them. I haven't seen them a lot, though. I think it's just kind of like a thing for the Warhammer nerds. But I don't really think it's something that's incredibly common. But still, I thank you so much for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Andrew, for the support. He said, Laika was the first animal in space, and she had a tragic end. The Soviets had a bad record with animals, and much love to the Corgi Special Forces.
And Laika, the space dog, is a real deal. Take a look at this dog. This thing died, by the way. But it was a nice dog.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, it looks like a pitiful thing.
It was a stray dog from the streets of Moscow. So yes, it was quite
really?
pitiful indeed. Yeah, so they had a dog that they were training for some time, before the launch of this pod here. And then one day someone left the door open, I'm not kidding, and it ran outside and it disappeared. So they didn't know where the hell it went. So they were like, oh shit. They're like, the rocket's about to launch in like a week. We got to find something. So they went into Moscow, they found this dog, and they just brought it down the Baikonur and then shot it off on the rocket. No training involved or nothing. So this dog didn't even know what was going on. And it ended up dying, I think, from asphyxiation and overheating, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be sick right there in that picture.
Yeah, also, I think they did recover. I don't know if they recovered the body or not, but I remember that the Soviets did taxidermy some of the dogs that they used as like living monuments. Maybe that is it. I don't know. But still, it was not a great story for any of the animals involved in the Soviet space program. Usually in the United States, we tried to get the animals back alive, and generally did. I think there was very few exceptions to that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt yet again, who puts in the 5. He says, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past," said George Orwell.
And that's fairly true. That's fairly true, I'd assume, especially in an authoritarian society. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 3 from Gladiator, who said, "Remind us how LSA came to be. I was there."
Oh, yeah, well, that was a good story. We were going down memory lane all night tonight. But let's see. Way back at the beginning of the war, 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago at this point, we were looking at a truck burning in a field near Chernihiv. It was a Panzer S1, and it had a visible leaf spring suspension on the back. I said it was obsolete and outdated, and I was totally wrong, and I got a flame for it in the chat for 2 straight days. So we just decided to lean into it as a joke and start calling it the Leaf Spring Army, and that's where the name came from for the large part. That is the story. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Plazant, who put in a 3, and also U1, who put in a 2. And thank you very much, Plazant and U1, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. And we also have a 2 from Dylan Fuqua, who said, "Dear LSA sirs, I request new LSA merch, and go LSA." And Dylan, I am actually procrastinating on that because I've got so much going at the moment. And remember, it's just me and the Enforcer. Like, we don't have anybody working for us or anything like that. So everything we do has to be on both of us. So I would honestly love to get the merch back out. The next merch that we're doing will probably be the LSA flags, but that requires a ton of planning up front, and also a lot of web design, a lot of supply chain work, and things like that. And also we got to figure out where we're actually going to sign the flags this time if we decide to do them again. So that's a lot of work. And also I'm working on the Greenland project. I'm working on another project. Also, tax season's coming around. Also, the short war videos are going. The live streams are still going. And also I got the Twitter and the Patreon. So between all of that stuff, I am swamped. But I might be able to fit in the merch as well, hopefully, because I'd like to get back to it. If I had some like employee or something like that, I would have them doing it, at least some part of it. But sadly, we don't. We're not good enough, or we're not rich enough to have an employee. But thank you very much, Dylan, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you for the support. Hopefully, we will be able to get merch out soon. But like Matthew's saying, we have a lot going on behind the scenes. And there's some other stuff going on in the background, which slows things down, which is always wonderful. We always love to have just extra stuff going on in the background, but that's also kind of a thing that I know at least is slowing me down. Probably isn't slowing Matthew down that much at all, but it's just like, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's getting me onto my last nerve. I hide that fairly well in the stream. It has nothing to do with the channel. It has nothing to do with what me and Matthew are doing or anything involved with that at all. Something totally detached. But it is getting me to the point that I'm about to lose my last nerve with it. So hopefully I've been hiding that well for the past few weeks, because at this point I'm about at my limit with this thing. And so that's slowing me down a good bit because I'm mostly fuming on that one thing most of the time. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support, though. And hopefully we will have some merch out for y'all really soon. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 2 and says total victory, 4.5 million ton displacement.
And thank you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep it running and 4.5 million ton displacement. That's a pretty big deal right there. I guess you'd say that's a big ship. And so with that, though, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so our last one here goes to Vic the Red, who puts in a 2 and says Murica, LSA.
Hey, America! And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running, and we wouldn't be able to be proud citizens of the United States of America. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so it's now time to move into our live chat questions. And also, big shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel once again tonight, excuse me, and also helping to keep the channel running. But with that, we're now moving on to all of your questions and the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight, we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps for Royal Fluffiness, Arable Garbo, Joni Dog, and also Norm Pritchett joined the ranks tonight as well. They said Morse code reads for today: the ramping up pressure on the Russians and North Korea. Let's hope it works. LLT, LSA.
And that is the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct on the 1070th day, because y'all continue to get that right time and time again. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the live chat questions. Due to us being overtime, unfortunately, we will only be able to get 3, and then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and we've got a question that I've been waiting to get to, actually. It's been put in by Jay Bagwell, and we actually had a very interesting conversation about this before, so I'm very interested to get on it again. And Jay said, it appears that China has had its Sputnik moment with AI, with DeepSeek, and I'll be curious to see what you guys think. And honestly, if y'all are not up to date with this is a very big deal. In fact, if you're probably investing in the stock market, you're probably well aware of it, because the market eliminated trillions in value yesterday because of the DeepSeek trauma that just happened. To put the story in perspective here, DeepSeek is a new AI that China is creating that is supposedly marginally better than OpenAI's ChatGPT, and it's the big deal is it's a lot cheaper, and also it can run on a local system, granted at a very slow rate, but it can run on a local PC with enough power and enough RAM behind it. But the catch with it is, though, NVIDIA, which is a large company which develops GPUs, which are needed to operate the AI models, that company lost $500 billion, or actually more than that yesterday, in market value just because of the DeepSeek announcement. And it turns out, I literally just saw that 30 minutes ago, OpenAI claims that it has evidence that China's DeepSeek used its own stuff to train its own model. Which will, of course, not be permitted. But that's nothing new for China, but it sounds like they might have ripped off OpenAI, according to an article by the Financial Times. So that wouldn't be shocking to me at all. In fact, I would probably speculate that that might be true. But we don't know that for a fact, but it could be true. So that's what we're hearing right now. Honestly, I don't think it's a Sputnik moment. I think it's being overblown and overhyped. And China effectively tanked our markets yesterday by doing this little one trick that doctors tell you not to do. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would be honest, you explain that way better than me, because artificial intelligence technology is out of my wheelhouse for the large part. I know a little bit about it, but not really a lot. And I know about its implications, but the actual, like, I guess you could say the recipe for the sauce, I don't really know much about. So I think Matthew hit that down on the nail way better than I ever could. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, this one goes to Knox Date, who says, I just got updated that the doomsday clock just went down to 1 second before midnight. But how close do you guys think we are to a nuclear war being possible in the near future? And the LSA, we the best on the news. And I saw that, Knox. I saw that. I don't know if the enforcer got to see it, but I saw that we're 1 second away from a disaster, according to those nuclear scientists. Honestly, it's a bit of a marketing ploy that they use with that, but I would agree that we're probably the closest we've been to a nuclear conflict since the Cold War. It's getting pretty damn close, actually, and we're not even really fully aware of exactly what's going on in the background. We just see what's happening in the public. And I'm sure it's probably actually a little bit more concerning if you knew the ins and outs of the situation. So I would say that we're close, but, it's close in perspective. But Enforcer, what say you?
When was the doomsday clock? It was inaugurated in June of 1947. I'm not going to lie. For them to say that we're closer to nuclear war now than the Cuban Missile Crisis is a little bit bizarre. Because it's like, we depth charged a Soviet submarine and forced it to surface when the clock was around at that time. It's like, that's a little bit wild to say that we're closer, like the clock saying we're closer now. I think the Cuban Missile Crisis was far closer to a full-on war and a nuclear incident than we are right now. We're close. I'd say this is probably the second closest we've ever made it, next to the Cuban Missile Crisis. But for the clock to be that exaggerated, I don't really think that's exactly true. Also, another thing is that the doomsday clock isn't necessarily it's just not really what it used to be. Like, I'll be honest, it's been very politicized. Like, like it's almost like the political Kool-Aid that people get nowadays. Like, if one president's in, oh, we're fine, like nothing will ever happen, and then another one gets in, we're all about to die. Like, it's just like that's what the doomsday clock has turned into at this point. And I haven't been around long, but I've been around long enough to know that clock is full of crap these days, like, to be entirely honest, because it seems arbitrary what they move the clock for these days, compared to something that, on a foreign policy level and on a diplomatic level, like it used to be back in the day, you could actually tell things were getting bad, and then they'd start changing the clock. Nowadays, they just change it because of things like I can't even, like, it's domestic political things that I can't even get into. So that's I'll be honest, I don't think we're the closest that we've ever been to nuclear war. The Cuban Missile Crisis was closer. And also, wait a minute, hang on, hold up, no way. Okay, hold up, let's look at this. So it was 2 seconds away to midnight during this time. The Cuban Missile Crisis happens in 1960. So you know what they do? Oh, we're going to just bump it up to 7 seconds to midnight. We're about to actually go into a nuclear war at this point, but we're now going to move the clock up. It didn't even look like it made sense back then. Like, to be entirely frank, look at this. And also look at this doomsdaying that they've been doing since the 90s. Like, things have honestly been only getting better, and they're like, oh, we're getting closer to midnight. It's like, come on.
Also, they really didn't even register. Like, a couple of years ago, there was an incident that the United States had with China, which was not well known publicly. But apparently there was a really, really close call between the United States and China over something. I can't really recall what it was about. It was very secretive, honestly. But I saw some news articles saying that we were close to a nuclear war with China, right? Like, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. But I don't see that reflected on this chart either.
Yeah, and also look at all this doomsdaying that they've been doing since the 90s, because probably around the 90s they started to become fairly irrelevant, I'll be completely frank. So then they're like, oh, we got to get relevance. Quick, bump it down, bump it down, bump it down again, bump it down. We'll bump it up once, bump it down, bump it down, bump, bump, bump. Just endless bumps. They've been bumping it down farther and farther since the 90s. Like, it hasn't gone up once but 2010. It's like, you're not telling me that we went through the whole Cold War and this thing could actually fluctuate up and down, like as you see, while we're literally on the verge of getting nuked by the Soviet Union every day. And then afterwards, after the Russian Federation collapsed and the rise of China really didn't even happen until the beginning of 2010, it's going down endlessly up to that point, and then it keeps going. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that does not, like, this clock does not make any sense anymore at all. Next thing you know, they're going to be counting milliseconds, because they're going to have to keep it relevant somehow. So I'll be honest with you, like, I don't think the clock counts for squat, like, because this is like, it doesn't even seem consistent, to be entirely honest. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, before we get to that one, a mini question right before we get to that one. This one goes to the Sunken Grave and said, are you going to apply for those White House briefing passes?
Yes.
And yes, we are. We're actually going to apply for that. I'm not really sure what the criteria really are for them, as I did some looking this morning on it to try to figure out what was required to get it. And we were told that apparently they've lowered the requirements to allow podcasters and also people with a social following that cover news to also get into the briefing room to ask questions. So we're going to try to get it, and we're going to apply for it and see what happens. And I'll withhold comment until then, but I have a feeling I know how it works already, but we'll see if it's actually the case or not. We're going to go for it and see what happens. But Enforcer, what say you? And then we have one more question.
I would say the same thing. We are going to try and get those passes. I think it would be really neat, and hopefully we'd be able to use them someday by talking to someone in the government that would matter in our field, like the Secretary of State or something else along those lines. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, Matthew, let's get that lucky last question of the night.
All right, and that question goes to the Kraken, who says, your comments on the New Jersey drones, Enforcers, what's your take? And they actually came out with a report on those New Jersey drones, by the way. We were promised a report, and we got one. And let me go find the Twitter post real quick, and I can actually read off to you what it said. Let me scroll down. I've been retweeting like a fiend today, so it's buried here. Let me scroll on down. I've been tweeting a hell of a lot. Here we go. It says, White House clears the air on New Jersey drones. Not the enemy, says press secretary. It was authorized for FAA for research, and hobbyists are behind it. So that is the official narrative right there that the government's putting out. And I think most people are going to find that to be lacking in explanation. So I'm not really sure if they know what it is at this point, if maybe they're trying to say something to try to tamp down the public fears. But that explanation really does not satisfy my curiosity one bit. It sounds like they're just trying to make a quick answer to sort of cover something up. So I'm not sure what it is. It could be research drones that defense contractors are flying across the country, or it could be drones and we're not sure how to deal with it, or we could not know what it is. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it is a little bit weird as well. I'd honestly say it leans more towards the government testing. But then again, they flew over restricted areas of bases, and these bases were reporting them as security violations, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I would honestly say it sounds as though the answer is a little bit lacking, and it doesn't really sound like it actually answered what exactly was going on with those drones and what they were doing and why they were around and why no one really knew what they are and what they were doing. So I would have to largely agree with Matthew on that. But with that, I hope that does address the final question of the night incredibly well. And with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all for being here tonight. It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run the news for all 67,000 of y'all who have been here over the course of the night and the 10.6 thousand people who are here at the peak. We hope that y'all join us tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, so that way we can cover the next 24 hours of the news, and hopefully y'all will be here for it. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for watching once again tonight. And of course, 70,000 people joined us, and we had 3,200 likes. And thank you all once again for smacking that like button and also watching the channel as well. But with that, we will see you all tomorrow midday on a short war video. And I think maybe tomorrow is the Enforcer's Day or my day. I can't remember. But whoever it is, you'll be. I think it is my day, actually. So if there is news to cover tomorrow, you'll be hearing from me yet again on the Short War video. And also, of course, tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next nightly War News stream. But with that, folks, thank you all for watching. And of course, to Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava. And with that, good night.